Please start the recording. Great. Okay, welcome everyone. This is the CB2 April full board meeting. My name is Susan Kent. I am the board chair. And since we now have quorum, let us start with attendance. Amy, take it away.
Sorry, was muted. Suzanne Aaron,
Here.
Natasha Abanassians,
Here.
Akila Asqui, William Benesh,
Here.
Keenberger,
Here.
Carter Booth.
Here.
Okay, great. Katie Bordenaro, Anita Brandt,
Here.
I'm here. Rich Cacapolo. Okay, Richard Chattree is absent with notice. Valerie De La Rosa is absent with notice. John Paul DeVerna,
Here.
Chris Stignes,
Here.
Robert Ely. I
Here.
think I saw you, yeah. Mara Fitzgerald. Stella Fitzgerald,
Here.
Cormac Flynn. Oh, no, he's late. I'm sorry, he's coming half an hour late. Susan Gamey. David Gruber. Wayne Kawadler,
Here.
Susan Kent,
Here.
Ryder Kessler,
Here.
Janine Kiley. I know you're here. I saw you. What? Janine? Okay, I see her, but I'll come back to her. Ivy Quanars. Hey, Janine, can you say you're present? All right. I don't know what's that. Okay, Mar's here. Great. Hold on. Ivy Quanars. Patricia Laria,
Here.
Michael Levine,
Here.
Janet Liff,
Here.
Ed Ma. Ed Ma. Okay, Matt Metzger,
Here.
Daniel Miller,
Here.
Juan Osorio,
I'm here.
Brian Pape,
Present.
Donna Raftery,
Here.
Lois Rakoff,
Present.
Borica Bono, Zach Roberts,
Here.
Robin Rothstein,
Here.
Racia Sands,
Present.
Shirley Secunda,
Here.
Kristen Shea, Frederica Siegel,
Here.
Dr. Shirley Smith, Shannon Spence, Susan Wittenberg,
Here.
Anthony Wong,
Present.
Cheryl Wu,
Here.
Eugene Yu,
Here.
Adam Zeldin. Okay, I'll go through that just one more time. Akila Asqui, Katie Bordenaro, okay, Rich Cacapolo,
Yeah, I'm here.
okay,
Katie is here. She's waving her hands.
Katie, okay, Susan Gamey, David Gruber, Janine Kiley,
Here.
Ivy Quanars, okay, Ed Ma, Borica Bono, Kristen Shea, Dr. Shirley Smith. Oh, okay, she's in now. Shannon Spence and Adam Zeldin. Okay. We have quorum.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, next we turn to the public session. Unfortunately, our first vice chair is unable to be here this evening, so the public session will be run by our second vice chair, Eugene Yu.
Yay.
Thank you, Susan. I will call 3 names and then we will promote you to be a panelist and you can speak. So the first 3 names, and if you could also raise your hand from the attendees, that would just make things a little bit easier. But the first 3 names, Stephanie Altman, Adam Root, and Mitchell Grubler.
And just to remind all of our public speakers, they each get 2 minutes. Afterwards, the board members and only the board members may ask questions of them if they so choose. And we ask that please no one interrupt them because they only do have 2 minutes and that goes rather fast.
Okay, I see Adam Root is here. So Adam, why don't you start? And again, I'm still looking for a Stephanie Altman and Mitchell Grubler.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak here quickly. I appreciate it. I'm actually reaching out on behalf of several dog owners who are petitioning and hoping for a couple hours of off-leash hours in Washington Square Park in the morning. I know this debate has been brought up in the past, and I just want to reiterate my support for this. We have a dog who is a well-trained dog, and I found that going to Washington Square Park in the morning has been a great place for the dogs off leash. And unfortunately, it seems that during COVID, the number of dogs in New York City have just increased substantially, and the dog parks are becoming more and more crowded. And the nice thing about the off-leash area is that because the dogs are off leash, it sort of forces the owners to really keep an eye on them, and only well-trained, well-behaved dogs will be off leash. So because of that, it sort of promotes the policy of everyone self-policing to make sure that dogs are behaving themselves. All the owners are cognizant of picking up, poop and making sure there's no digging or anything like that. And of all the things, I hate to say it, but of all the things going on in the park during these times, it seems as if the dogs are the least of the concern. I go to use the men's room, unfortunately, and you see used needles on the floor. So I'm just hoping that a couple of well-trained dogs in the morning during a specific time, without people abusing the behavior, can be allowed to go off leash and not bother anyone during that time. Happy to answer any questions and elaborate further, but that's sort of my 2-minute elevator pitch. So I appreciate you allowing me to speak.
I do see Frederica has, there are hands up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you tell us what area of the park you want the dog to be off leash on?
Sure, absolutely. It's right when you're walking down Fifth Avenue, as you go through the archway, on the right-hand side, there's that grassy area where there's a slight barrier with like a couple of guardrails. Excuse me with the background noise, apologies. There's a couple of guardrails. So it's right on that, I believe it's the 8th Street entrance to the right of the archway when you're facing south. So it's on the north end of the park.
Okay, Susan Wittenberg.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned a couple of well-trained dogs. We were informed I guess it might have been last month's full board meeting, where a woman presented the proposal, and she said it would be at least 75 dogs for a few hours each morning, every day. So I'm just sharing that information, which is conflicting.
Sure. So I've been going down there. I've been living in the neighborhood for 10 years, and I've been going down there. And, obviously it started with a couple dogs and it's grown. I have gone down every single morning. I don't think I've seen more than 15 dogs ever once. 75 is...
Well, she did say that there were less now because of ticketing, and they anticipated the number increasing significantly once the ticketing stopped, which is a fact.
Sure. I mean, I guess there's no way to physically prove how many dogs are going to be at every time other than...
I'm just questioning the couple of well-trained dogs.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
all. No,
Sure.
I don't want to take
Sure.
up more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Levy.
Yes, can you tell us what needs to happen to make this happen? whose approval is required, or to whom does a request be made? What would put this in motion to expand the area of off-leash dogs?
I don't know if that question is necessarily directed at me, as I would defer to you folks. We've reached out to City Council, Washington Square Park, everyone that we can. It seems as if everyone just says, make your voice heard to, your local officials in the park. Because the Rangers, every conversation that we've had with the Rangers, for the most part, has been they're just doing their job, they're following orders. So until they're told otherwise, they're just doing their job. So we're kind of hoping for some direction as well from you folks.
Okay, thank you.
And Rich.
Hey, can you tell me what's wrong with the dog park? There are 2 dog parks there.
Absolutely. So since COVID, as you can imagine, the sheer number of people with dogs in New York City has grown exponentially. Because there's really no regulation in the dog park as far as what kind of dogs can get brought in, it's much more crowded, it's much dirtier, and it leads to a lot more dogs being aggressive because it's such a confined space. The dogs can't really run. There's a little bit more of just them on top of each other. And so, you do end up getting a little bit more scuffles in the dog park. And most importantly, because it's a contained area, fine people don't necessarily watch their dogs. So there's way more feces and dog waste around because no one feels as incentivized to keep a watchful eye on their dog as much.
So should they be closed?
No, I don't think they should be closed because I think there's a lot of dogs in New York City that are not sufficiently well trained enough to be off leash. So for folks that have those type of dogs, they absolutely need a place. But if your dog is not well trained, they shouldn't be off leash, and that's the owner's responsibility, especially considering there's cars that are a block north and south of the park.
Right. So dogs that are not well trained should go to the dog park, and dogs that are well trained, as determined by, I guess, the owner, should be allowed to run in the park. That's what you're proposing?
I mean, I'm not necessarily saying it's as black and white. I'm just hoping that for 2 hours potentially, you folks can give us a little bit of leeway in the morning, and give us, even if it was for 6 months, to see how things go from a trial run. I guess my concern, as an avid, not only park goer, but a person in the community is, and I'm sure you folks have all been to that park before, there's a lot of unfortunate things going on in that park at all times. And it seems that, the dogs are a secondary concern, shall I say. Just my humble opinion, obviously.
Thank you. I see no more hands. I'm sorry. Eugene, who was the next person?
Yes, so the next person, I'm not seeing Stephanie Altman or Mitchell Grubler. So the next person on the list, next several people: Ashley Jones, Miho Shoji, and William Lee. So
And I would also ask any of our attendees, if your name has not been called, please lower your hand so that we don't, and until you're actually called. Thank you.
Eugene, I don't see any of those names which you had just called.
Okay. All right, then I'll move on to the next set of names. Gilda Pervin, I think I did see their name. So Gilda Pervin. Sean Harris.
I also have a Miho Shoji. And
I don't see Sean Harris.
And did you call Campbell Munn?
Not yet. So Campbell Munn.
Eugene, could you ask everyone to spell their names before they start speaking and the clock goes on?
Sure.
Thank you.
Gilda is up. I don't see any of the other names.
Okay, so let's go with Gilda. Hi, Gilda.
Hi. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm concerned about the application by the GG group for the large mega club that will be coming up. And I'm a member of the coalition of the Bowery Elizabeth Street, and I must be nervous. Like catching my words. Elizabeth Street and Lena, and also the Bowery Alliance of Neighbors and the Bowery Block Association. The neighbors in this community, this neighborhood, are a mixed bunch of people who work at home sometimes, sleep at different hours. It's a mixed community, commercial and residential, and people, as I say, are awake and asleep at different times. And the application is an application for a heavy duty club that goes from early morning, 8 in the morning until 4 in the morning. So this is a big concern, and also concern about the traffic, the heavy traffic that would take place for the large number of people who would be in the building, leaving at 4 in the morning and coming early, who knows at what time. So the traffic is a very big problem. And also the noise that would come into the street and into our homes, the heavy enhanced low frequency bass into our homes and studios and offices. So this is a big concern, and I just want to register that. And it seems to me lately, I've been thinking that the elephant in the room is even the attraction for greater crime, especially on side streets when the club does close. So it's a question of traffic and noise into our homes and the street and crime. So I hope that this will not take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
Yes, thank you for your comment. Can you tell us the exact location of the proposed club and what is there now?
It's 138, and now it's a hotel, though I don't know how many people use it, and a residence, and I don't know how many people are in the building.
And it's located at the Bowery and what intersection?
Between Grand and Broome Street.
Thank you.
But it would affect the side streets of Little Italy and you know, up and down the street, and definitely Elizabeth Street. I'm sure others will be speaking about this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Amy?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for coming and speaking to us today. Are you advocating for no club at all, or an adjustment of the hours, or what? I'm just looking for a little more detail. Thank you.
Well, I would be advocating for no club at all. So that would be my preference. I don't know how it'll work out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Eugene, are there any more? Do you have any more speakers?
Yes, I do. So I see that we have William Lee was a speaker, but Carla Kozlowski is William Lee's partner. So Carla, I have promoted you, and you should be able to speak. And next up after Carla will be Loria Song. And Loria, when I promote you, if you could also speak, just give a little preview of what you're speaking, what you're here for. That would be great. So Carla, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and for the work that you do and for listening to the citizens of this community. So I live very close to, again, the 138 Bowery project, and I'm on this call to strongly object to this liquor license application. by Gigi Group. I'm here to advocate for my neighbors who can't be here tonight, obviously for my partner, for those in the community who don't know the details of these plans, which are going to impact the social welfare of this neighborhood in an incredibly negative way. For those who can't attend this meeting tonight, for those who, don't speak English as a first language, we live, as Gilda had mentioned, in a really mixed neighborhood, mostly Chinese American. And I just think this is going to have a tremendous impact on the way we live and, sleeping. I was on the meeting, I was on the call the last meeting with this group, and we had lots of questions for them. A lot of their plans seemed very vague and not thought out. The hours are disturbing, and I found it disturbing that they kept referring to our neighborhood as lifeless and without energy. So I find when that disrespect shows up in a community board meeting, how is it going to show up when they're actually up and running? There's so much on this one block of the Bowery already. There's several hotels. There's 4 businesses that are open until 4 a.m. as it is, and 2 that are open until midnight. As it is, the noise is endless at night with the people, drunk and screaming, and the public urination and the vomit. I'm sorry, it's TMI, but it's the reality. We're talking about 4 a.m. That's what they want every single day. 700 plus people in an already congested single street block. They call it a theater. It's a club. What theater in New York City stays open until 4 a.m. 7 days a week? They say they have soundproofing, super fancy custom built, blah, blah, blah. There's no control over what happens when those 700 plus people spill out onto our sidewalks. And as Gilda mentioned, also, we're concerned about the additional, not just disorderly conduct, but the addition of drugs, of weapons, of predatory behavior on the sidewalk, especially sort of targeting women and minorities, as all of us know is happening in the city anyways. I just don't think it's humane to have the neighbors of a single business absorb their entire impact that their venue will surely produce. A normal night, could include, all those things that I listed, never mind the souped up cars, the motorcycles, et cetera, the additional noise on the street. The constant flow of congested traffic will not just be on Bowery, it'll be on Elizabeth, Kenmare, Grand, et cetera. It's going to be a nightmare. They're convinced there's enough parking. There's not. And also nobody's going to park. They're all going to take Lyfts and Ubers, and that's going to be a disaster. We can already see it at the Moxie Hotel. And when people have to wait for longer than a minute, it's New York City, honk, honk, honk. And, we are having trouble sleeping as it is. And I'm talking like 3 a.m. sleeping is not an option. So we don't want this. We don't want to have to contend with or absorb the ramifications of this business 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's
Thank you.
my plea.
Thank you. Okay,
Thanks.
you have been heard.
Thank you.
Are there any, actually, I don't think we have any more public speakers, but I do know that Councilmember Rivera is with us, I believe.
Hi, I'm here.
Oh.
I was provided that I would get allotment to speak, since a lot of people were.
Yeah, I can wait. I'm here. I'll be right here. Let me know when it's my turn.
Yes, of course, you will. I'm sorry, I just wanted to allow the council member to speak. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have several other speakers, and I'm sorry, my sheet was a little out of date. So, but next up on the sheet was Gloria Song.
Miss Song. So why don't you go?
Yep.
Yes, so so my name is Gloria Song, and I've been a resident at 79 McDougal Street, where the Coffee Dante is, for the past like 5 to 7 years. The establishment that we neighbor, Dante, has always been a food and restaurant establishment, but since the new owners have taken over, it has become significantly out of control for the residents. I know that a lot of the residents in the building have reached out to our management company to kind of help with the noise issue and how they've been abusing the courtyard. But we have not been able to find any kind of help or support in receiving some type of consideration from Dante. Also, since the pandemic, these problems have rapidly deteriorated further. So I know that I went online and I also researched a lot of the liquor license conditions when they got their approval, and a lot of these conditions are being currently violated. And including the sidewalk cafe, it doesn't close promptly by the times that they, are supposed to close down their sidewalk cafe. Also, they've taken up the whole sidewalk where residents now even have a hard time entering into our own buildings. And we don't know, it's clearly not even passing the code, the New York City code on outdoor establishment and dining. And there's no police or authorities that are coming to check on that. And it's just become like mayhem and out of control, like the Wild Wild West. So there's also an issue. They don't control the traffic flow to the sharing entrance to the building. So a lot of the times we have to deal with patrons who are smoking, where all the smoke just goes into the building, blocking the
15
entrance.
seconds.
Yeah, so there's a lot of issues, and we don't know why they're being allowed to operate even under the conditions where clearly they're violating a lot of the conditions they're supposed to keep when they got their approval to operate.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see some questions. Bob, Ely?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to let the person who just spoke, you should get in touch with our community board office and then ask to speak to one of the folks at the vessel. I
actually have. I've drafted a whole email and I've laid out everything, in an email, and nobody has bothered responding to me. And so this was my last resort. I've tried every single method, including 311. I spoke to somebody. I've really tried.
What was the email address that you used?
It was the one that was provided on the website.
Okay. We're going to have to respond to that, and we certainly can try to help out the situation and give you as much information as possible. We just need to open up communication. That's all.
Yeah, there's a lot of legality issues that they're violating, and there's nobody who's monitoring this, or they're not receiving any repercussions for violating any of these rules and conditions.
Okay, I'm going to give you my email address, and you can send me an email. Okay, you ready?
1 second.
Why don't you put it in the chat, Bob?
I'll put it in the chat. And
would you also like sound recordings and all of this along with it in the attachment?
I will put my email in the chat. You should get in touch with me. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Will, was your hand up?
I think Bob covered it enough, so I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Now, Councilmember Rivera, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. I was on my community board, community board 3 for many years, so I truly appreciate the public session. And I think clearly it's an important part of this process. So always willing to wait, and I want to thank you for the time. So hello, everyone. It's Carlina Rivera, District 2 Councilwoman. I was actually planning on being here for your February full board, but I'd actually gone into labor early. So I do have a healthy baby boy at home, which is very, very exciting. But yes, it's very exciting. But I missed the grind. So I'm here back as I'm easing out of maternity leave, and I really wanted to come by and say hello to you all. You all do have our newsletter. I know Biani is here every month, but I just wanted you all to know we're working on a few things in City Hall. In fact, next week I have a couple of bills that are being heard. There is a hearing in the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee of the City Council, an oversight hearing on bicycles, micro mobility, and street enforcement. So we have a bill on reporting on diverse conditions that are impacting road infrastructure, but I think the conversation that's going to be had is something that I know you all care deeply about, but is something that's incredibly important for the future of the city, and of course, how we plan, right? How we do better to make sure that pedestrians, cyclists, everyone feels safe, and that we're actually sharing the streets. And I do have another bill being heard on lead-based paint conditions in common areas, especially in homes where children are under 6. So we do have a large hearing, a big hearing with multiple pieces of legislation on that topic. But other than that, I did notice some park talk. So, you know, with the new map, I will be inheriting Washington Square Park. I'm super excited. I've told you all this a bunch of times, but I grew up going to that park because I went to school on Washington Place. I'm a Carmine kid. And I know that that park has a lot going on at the same time. Investments are always important. So in terms of funding, we're always looking at how we can improve infrastructure and just logistics and programming. But I will tell you that for the dog run conversation, which I know is something to be had in committee and with you all, you know, in Stuyvesant Square Park, we pretty much kind of created a dog run there, and it's always about maintenance and upkeep, right? Operational challenges. So it's how can the Parks Department keep up with the increase in dogs and overall just operations and maintenance. So I'd love to be involved in that conversation to be helpful and to support your work. And I will tell you, this Saturday, we're actually kicking off a volunteer event in Washington Square Park. There will be a number of volunteer events going forward, but this Saturday, Earth Day, is like the big kickoff. So we'll be ensuring that, you know, we're just cleaning up, keeping it nice and clean and making sure that you all feel proud when you walk through there. I know there's a ton of issues. I'm working through it, meeting with multiple groups, and I'm really excited about representing it officially in the city council. And then other than that, it's we're approaching budget season. So we just finished participatory budgeting. We're going to be announcing the winners for our district. But as you can imagine, a lot of the suggestions included schools, libraries, cultural institutions, public housing, and then park upgrades. So we're going to make that announcement, but there will be other things that we'll be funding throughout the cycle programmatically and infrastructure wise. And please let us know if there are certain areas we're looking at. We're doing a tree survey, but we're also looking at areas to improve lighting. So if there are dark spots or areas on the streets that you can let us know, where we can work with the Department of Transportation to improve conditions there, please let my office know. And we have a small business financing webinar in the newsletter, so take a look, let people know. We really want to support our small businesses and do so responsibly. So with that, I think, are those questions? I'm happy to take them. I don't want to.
They sure are. They sure are. Dan Miller, please.
Well, thank you so much for returning and welcome back and congrats.
Thank you.
I want to let you know that we have a resolution this month about establishing an e-bike lane with enforcement in mind for the next month's meeting. So we'd love your help in inviting the right speakers to talk about enforcement.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put, I think you have my email, but I'm going to leave it in the chat before, you know, when I wrap up, and then we can figure out how to, like you said, have the best people there so you can have the most productive conversation. And then, as you know, there will be tons of follow-up. So I will be happy to help with that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Rocio.
Thank you. So nice to see you, and congratulations for having a beautiful baby. God bless.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions, please. You mentioned that small businesses happen also to be small property owners. And you mentioned that they were, you didn't mention that. I'm saying that. I'm sorry. You said small businesses. You care about small businesses. Well, small businesses are also small property owners. There are many lead paint laws already on the books. What else are you proposing? And will you also propose to help those small property owners to be able to pay for the new regulations that you're pushing onto small property owners, which cost a lot of money? For instance, de-letting an apartment costs, maybe a 2-bedroom apartment costs about $50,000. So what other pains can we instill or force onto small property owners?
So thank you for the question. I always want to acknowledge Rocio's passion and advocacy for small property owners. You have been doing this since the day that we've met, and you bring up very legitimate concerns. And so I would never want to pass a piece of legislation that isn't going to, one, be supported by the city, funded thoroughly with an agency resourced, or that is an undue burden. And any legislation that's being proposed at this hearing is for safety, is to upgrade current, or I would say actually previous regulations for clarity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the agenda for the hearing I'm gonna put the link inside of the chat. And then Rocio, what I'm gonna do, if it's okay, is I want to send you some specifics to get your feedback, of course. And the other thing I want to say about the small property owners is, there's another hearing coming up in the committee on the environment. And I don't know if you remember local law 84 of 2013. It has to do with the Department of Buildings environmental standards. And I wanted to bring that to your attention because it actually does affect small property owners, how that has been implemented and enforced. And I want to ensure that you have that info as well. So thank you, as always. I am looking forward to seeing you hopefully at the NoHo stakeholders meeting. I know I always see you at those. So I'm going to drop those into the chat, and then any questions, I'm going to make sure that you have my email so we can follow up together and one-on-one. If there's something broader to report, I'm happy to come back next month and do that as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your words and your interest in helping small property owners and in educating us, including me. Thank you so much.
Same, I appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Will finish.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Carlina, and I want to offer my congratulations as well. My question's actually on a related topic. So local law 97, which is supposed to come into effect next year with possible fines for non-compliance. I've been sort of asking around, and I still feel like there's a lot of people who are not sure, a lot of buildings who don't know exactly what they need to be doing. Is there anyone you can direct us to or point us to that I think it'd be great to have sort of an informational session on this? So maybe there's not an answer right now, but then there's some of the rules I think we're still being fleshed out, but maybe if you could just help look into who the right person to talk to would be, who could kind of help educate the community on that.
Yeah, I'm thank you so much for that, because I'm actually trying to do some sort of info session, like webinar with the Department of Buildings, with a couple of sort of speakers that can answer like a wide array of questions and then give people actual takeaways, including a contact going forward where they could ask these questions instead of sort of like Googling it or looking for frequently asked questions. Since I also feel like the conversation as it is covered in the media as to what's going on at the state and what's going on in the city can be a little confusing. So maybe we can do something together and we'll figure out sponsorship. Most importantly, as you mentioned, is getting people who know what they're talking about. So
yeah, I would love to do that because I'm not sure it's necessarily fully on the radar of all the different co-op and condo boards and whatnot. So I think that'd be really helpful. So I can shoot you an email.
Okay, let's do that, because I'm also, one thing about the budget, I'm not sure if people know this, but, the city council also funds infrastructure upgrades to housing developments. And so whether they're mostly Michelamas, but, some affordable housing beyond NYCHA. So these are requests that come in, and a lot of it is to upgrade to stay, up to date with regulations, but also kind of the wear and tear of these buildings that were built decades ago. So local law 97. Ronnie, I'll put something in the chat for like maybe something as brief as and concise as possible as to what is local law 97, so you could take a look. And
Thank you so much, Carolina.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks. Great question.
Thank you. David Gruber.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, David, I'm well. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. It's been so long. Is that your committee? Are you the chair of the City Council Transportation Committee?
No, but I'm a member.
You remember. So can you just go over the bill that you're introducing and that you're having a hearing on? It went a little fast because it's something I might like to attend.
Okay, so we're having the hearing itself is on, I just want to make sure I have because I actually wrote down the entire title so I could read it to you all. It's an oversight hearing on bicycles, micro mobility, and street enforcement. And so there's a number of bills that are being heard. It's actually probably one of the busier hearings for transportation and infrastructure that I've seen. It's going to be April 24th at 10 a.m. Of course, you can watch it, you can participate. And just to pull up the agenda, I have it right in front of me. If you'll just give me a second. A few of the bills that are being heard are the reporting bill that I have, the map of current infrastructure conditions, especially as affects cyclists. There's another bill being heard in relation to notice requirements for certain transportation projects. There's another one in relation to hazardous obstruction by vehicles, and then civilian complaints, the Department of Transportation. That's when you have hazardous obstructions and violations, and whether civilians can actually report those themselves to the DOT. There are quite a few bills actually on this docket. And so I think what's going to be the most important is that conversation on street enforcement and how we're all working together. I have another bill to create an Office of Active Transportation and to have agencies work much better in terms of interagency and planning. That bill really hasn't moved, but I think that this conversation, as led by Sylvina Brooks Powers, who is the current Transportation Committee Chair, will probably be the most robust that you've seen the City Council in terms of discussing how we sort of all coexist. So I will, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish, please.
No, I was going to say, I'm going to put the agenda also in the chat for you all.
And this is at the City Council chambers at City Hall?
Yes.
Oh, so it's going to be a full day.
It'll be a full day. I'm planning on being there for, it's a really busy day
By
at
the way,
City Hall.
congratulations on your birthday.
Thank you.
child.
I
And,
know that's the hardest part is leaving this baby, but I trust my
I'll
husband.
come over and say hello when I see you on the 30th.
Okay. Okay, fabulous.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Councilmember Rivera. I see no more questions.
Well, thank you for the time. That was very gracious. Congratulations to you on this role. I'm really looking forward to all of us working together. So I'm going to drop a couple of those things into the chat. Be quiet. I'll be quiet. I'll be listening. And I just want to thank you all again. Really good to see you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel is with us. And so
I am. Good to see you.
go ahead.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone. Happy 420, as it were. Speaking of 420, we're trying to move legislation in Albany to allow the Office of Cannabis Management to do its job and crack down on the illegal smoke shops. That's not a celebratory message for 420, but it is something that I hear a lot about. I wrote the mayor back in June about this issue. I think he's got the enforcement powers to do something now, but if it requires Albany to take action, then we have to do it. Senator Krueger has a bill. I'm going to be supporting that, and hopefully we can get that done. More relevant is the issue of the budget. And as you probably know, it's late. It was due April 1st. Today we passed another extender to allow government workers to be paid, not legislators. Legislators don't get paid after April 1st until we sign the budget. But state workers will get paid through Monday. We may have to sign another extender. This is our third that we passed today. Wanted to let you know, third, that I'm having my first town hall in the new Senate district, which runs from Christopher Street all the way up to West 103rd. It's going to be on Sunday, May 7th, up at the Museum of Natural History. So hope you can join us 1 to 4 p.m. Should be interesting. Hope to have some of our elected colleagues there and a small program, but mostly I want to hear from constituents. Fourth is the work I've been doing as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. We approved through committee and on the full floor of the Senate 2 new judges for New York's highest court. The highest officer is the chief judge, and Rowan Wilson was nominated by the governor and approved by the committee and the full Senate. He's an extraordinary public servant. He's currently on the Court of Appeals, had a career as the first Black partner at Cravath, Swaine & Moore, one of those top international firms.
And he is now New York's first Black chief judge. So I have a lot of confidence in his abilities. And a Community Board 2 member was selected by the governor to be a new associate judge on the Court of Appeals. Her name is Caitlin Halligan. She, you often will see her on Saturdays in Abingdon Square, as I often do. A wonderful individual with also incredible public and private experience. She was the Solicitor General for the state of New York. That's the person who argues the cases on behalf of the state before the New York State Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. She's been before the Supreme Court 6 times and before the Court of Appeals dozens of times. So she's a wonderful advocate and now judge, Judge Halligan. So I'm very proud of having ushered those nominees through. And it's also very important because we had these vacancies on the court. We didn't have a chief judge. That has led to a lot of issues in family court and housing court and across the state of New York, where courts are understaffed and their caseloads are just bursting at the seams. So hopefully working with a new Court of Appeals, we can address some of these issues. Speaking of the courts, I've been advocating for cameras in courtrooms. We're one of only 2 states, the other being Louisiana, that doesn't allow cameras and behind closed courtroom doors. It's a big issue because there's obviously a big case in New York where the public has a lot of interest around the fate of the 45th president, but also we just need transparency and accountability. We hear a lot about our bail laws and how they're not working. If we had cameras, if we had no more public scrutiny in our courtrooms, I think we'd get better results. So I hope to pass that proposal in the state budget, which we're working on now. We'll let you know, but I also carry standalone legislation. And another issue involving courts are our problem-solving courts. These are diversion courts where a defendant can work with prosecutors, social workers, addiction specialists, and others to try to get their life together where a lawyer told me, the court that is in our jurisdiction, Midtown Community Court, is the only court where his client leaves the courtroom with a better life ahead of him than they entered. And they do amazing work. The problem has been since COVID, that the days of Midtown Community Court have been scaled back to only 1 day a week. We've been fighting along with your elected colleagues to get that expanded. Now it's open 2 days a week, but I hope with Judge Wilson at the helm and the Court of Appeals as chief judge, we can get that opened back to 5 days a week. And we worked with the Manhattan District Attorney in that regard. We've also been working with the Manhattan District Attorney on the issue of the horrific druggings, assaults, and murders involving LGBTQ folks at bars and nightclubs in our districts. There's been a string of them, 2 murders that thankfully are on the path to justice, but there are at least 30 others that are unsolved at this point. Not so much murders, thank God, but the actual drugging and kidnapping of patrons at bars. They're drugged, they're kidnapped, and then their bank accounts are drained of all of their funds. It's word to the wise that Zelle and other online platforms are not terribly secure, so should always use second factor authentication. Never give your PIN out to anyone. Realize that your phone, has a lot of data that folks with bad notions will try to steal from you. So the district attorney, along with Community Board 2 and others, met with bar owners to try to figure out what we can do to address this issue and to hear from the district attorney on his efforts. So I wanted to thank Lois and Susan for attending that. And then finally, as part of the budget, I've been advocating the ban of menthol cigarettes, which Flavored cigarettes are a gateway drug to a lifetime of nicotine addiction. We've banned every flavor of cigarette, including e-cigarettes, except for menthol. And menthol targets, I'm sorry, oh, there you go. Menthol is the last remaining flavor in New York. We need to ban it because the big tobacco has targeted the Black community and LGBTQ people in particular. And their marketing campaign has been insidious and obviously resulted in the deaths of God knows how many people. So we want to ban menthol. The governor has proposed that. I hope she gets it done. And we've been advocating for that in Albany. That's my report, except to say that we have a forum for NYCHA tenants on Thursday, April 27th, about NYCHA tenants and what rights they have. And finally, I wanted to acknowledge Susan taking the helm of CB2. Very proud of that, since I served alongside Susan for, I don't know, at least 10 years on Community Board 2. We sat at the dais for many, many years together. And I also have a proclamation here for Janine for all of her great work, declaring today, 4/20, April 20th, Janine Kiley Appreciation Day in the 47th Senate District. So we'll get a copy of this to you, Janine.
Thank you.
It's so well deserved. You were a terrific chair, and I'm so thankful for your efforts in so many respects. Particularly, I have to say, dyslexia equity for our students. So as a dad of a dyslexic kid, your work has meant the world to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
But we do have a few questions, and I just ask our members to please be concise. Dan.
Thank you so much for all the advocating in so many positive ways. I really appreciate it. Senator, I chaired a Hudson River Park Advisory Council meeting last night that Natalie attended. She mentioned an $800,000 bill that you're promoting for traffic, or something to do with e-bikes or lane studies. Does that ring a bell?
Yes, we're promoting a safety study for the Hudson River Park and the West Side Highway, Route 9A. We have advocated for that in the budget, and I hope we can get it across the finish line.
Okay, Dr. Smith.
Yeah, hi, Brad. Good to see you.
Hi.
It's
Nice to
not
see
a
you.
question, it's just a comment. Thank you so much for your support as it relates to the judicial decision for the judge. Wilson.
Thank you. That means a lot. He's an
He's
amazing
great.
individual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good decision. Smart move. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
John DeVerna.
Hi, I agree with the doctor. Good choices on the judges, and in particular that one. I had a question, or is there any sort of advocacy to allow for more remote and non-in-person court appearances, both on the civil and the criminal side? It was a nice innovation to see in the pandemic, but it's coming from on high. A lot of the judges are getting pressure to have people move back to in-person. And I just want to know kind of where are we moving on that? Are we going to embrace modernity, or are we going to try to go back to the way things were?
That's a really good question. Well, you know, the cameras in the courtroom is an interesting intersection of that idea, because the previous Office of Court Administration has said that this is just too expensive, even though so many courtrooms had the audiovisual equipment during COVID. I hope you're right. I mean, I hope it is an effort at modernity, because it'd be really helpful to clear a lot of these cases and make it easier for, you know, for litigants and their representatives. But I don't know the answer to that. there's no real, that's more of an internal court decision. There's no legislation on it per se, except that we continue to try to fund the offices of court administration so they can pursue these types of efforts. But it's something I'd, be interested in, knowing if there's like city or state bar support around that and what specifically we might work toward. But happy to speak to you, after the meeting or on another day to try to figure out a path forward on the broad notion.
Thank you.
Robin.
Hey, Brad Hoyleman, how are you?
Hi, good.
This might be a little bit more city focused, but I'm wondering if you can speak to what the state's role might be in expediting the conversion of office space into residential. There's a housing crisis nationwide and certainly New York City, but I feel like at the state level, there are things happening. And I know this is a very complicated issue, but rather than it got all caught up in red tape for years, we really need people to get into own, houses that they own. So can you speak to where things stand as far as that happening?
The mayor made a push up in Albany to do that exact thing through the commercial conversion effort to transform commercial buildings into residential. I supported it. It is in discussion in the state budget. Although I'm hearing tonight, many of the housing issues may be off the table. That's what news reports are suggesting, which is very disappointing. The director of city planning, Dan Gorodnik, was up in Albany too. And so I was strongly supporting it. I did suggest that they needed to build an affordability into their plan or mandatory inclusionary housing. I don't know if they took us up on their offer in terms of the city's plan, but that's what we were advocating in terms of the city's ask. Still haven't landed on what the housing program is going to look like in the state budget, if at all, but it was something I supported and advocated for as long as it was affordable.
Quick follow-up. Do you see a timeline? Like, is there a light at the end of the tunnel, or this is going to go on for a long time, do you think?
Well, this budget, are you talking about the budget? Because
No, I know, no, just getting this making this happen, being able to streamline converting office space that is not being used as much because of remote work and hybrid work into residential.
We had that exact proposal before us, Robin, and I'm not sure of the outcome. Again, I supported it. It's been part of the discussions as part of the governor's housing compact, but it seems to be on life support at the moment because of differences that between the houses and the governor on how it would actually work. If it's not going to happen, I'm going to be extremely disappointed. But I just wanted to be candid to tell you that as of tonight, I hear that many of these housing proposals may be, may not see it in the final budget.
Okay, thanks for your candor.
Well, thank you. Anything else? Oh, Lois.
Yeah, thank you for bringing attention about mentholated cigarettes, because that should go under candy cigarettes, chocolate cigarettes, bubblegum cigars back in the day, and also that young people think that they are not smoking tobacco when they are inhaling the menthol. And thank you so much for bringing that up as a health ed person. And if there's anything we can do to promote this bill or resolution, let us know, because no one knows how bad those menthol cigarettes are. Vapes are one thing, but that people think if they're smoking mentholated cigarettes, there's no danger to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I, was talking to some of my colleagues who are old enough to remember when they were pregnant that the doctors suggested they smoke menthol cigarettes.
Yep.
Crazy. Thankfully, we've recognized the dangers of cigarette smoking, but we just haven't come to grips with the fact that flavors entice young people to be hooked on nicotine. So thank you for that.
Thank
you.
Lois. Keith?
Congratulations, Brad, for being chair of the Judiciary Committee and doing such great work. But
Thank you.
expect now from the new chief judge? What changes are going to happen?
Well, I think we're going to have a majority finally that is going to protect tenants who are rent regulated. There's a big case that's going to be coming up to the Court of Appeals. Another big case that's going to be coming up is going to be around our Green Amendment. That's the new constitutional amendment that was passed into law in November that gives New Yorkers a right to clean air and water. That's going to be litigated before the Court of Appeals, as well as issues around labor rights and unionization. So those are three big areas that involve the state constitution. Certainly, there are a lot of issues that are going to be kicked back to states because the federal courts and the Supreme Court is, basically sending a lot of this, including abortion rights, to state courts. So we may have issues before the Court of Appeals that previously would have been before the United States Supreme Court. So state courts are where the action is what it boils down to, and our rights are going to have to be protected by this new Court of Appeals. So I hope for good things. Obviously, it's an independent branch of government, and independence on the court of independence on the part of our judiciary is crucial. But I'm hopeful, given their backgrounds, both Halligan and Wilson will represent the best of us.
Well, thank you so much then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Rocio?
Great to see you, Brad.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Well, so you just triggered something in my head when you said, speaking about clean air and smoking cigarettes. So I don't know about you, but the smell of cannabis is stinking up our city, and it's really infiltrating all over. When you walk in the street, when you sit in any outdoor place, the smoke of cannabis is really pretty strong in many areas, and not everyone is in favor of this smell. I'm not, for instance. And the other one is just the fact that smoking cigarettes, you're saying how bad it is. Well, tell us how bad is smoking cannabis that is addicted, and there's always going to be a black market. So what are we going to do about these things that was passed into law?
Well, I think you're onto something. The truth is, because of our federal government sticking its head in the sand over the last 75 years, there's been no research on the harms of smoking cannabis. So we really don't have any data about the safety of smoking cannabis at this point. I can't imagine that it's overall healthy. It's probably healthier and less addictive than nicotine. That's what some studies would suggest. But I think you're right. It's an evolving science. The more we learn about it, you'll probably, I can foresee a time when there are warning labels stamped on cannabis products. And certainly we talk about flavors of cigarettes. You've got flavored gummies. So I'm not going to deny that there is an incongruity in the way we're approaching this issue. I do think overall the legalization of cannabis is a good thing. It's the reality of our society, and the way we structured the legislation was to allow individuals who had been the target of law enforcement the first shot at opening cannabis and taking advantage of this new opening cannabis shops and taking advantage of this new market. That said, that seems to have gone in a direction that nobody predicted, where hundreds of illegal shops have stepped into the void and operated without any, concern for people who were the object of the war on drugs. And so the social justice component of our legislation is kind of a joke right now, to be honest, with all the illegal shops. That's why we need to shut them down. And these operators need to pay taxes. They need to be licensed like every other establishment. I'm aghast at the fact that this is, taken months for any real action, and yet still nothing has happened. So I'm with you on that.
Brad, I would also want to say that I think veterans who served our country should be given the opportunity, not the people who were breaking the laws, but the veterans who served our country and have lost legs, arms, and
Well, they are certainly they're part of the social equity. They're part of the social equity component too. I know there was news reporting suggesting that they were getting short shrift. I don't know or believe that that's accurate. So, that was a New York Post headline. So take it for what it's worth. But it's something certainly to monitor as to who is getting.
It sounds
the
like
licenses.
something that would go to our either the Cannabis Committee or the Equity, Race, and Justice Committee. So I would ask you, why don't you propose that as a topic?
I just said.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. So thank you.
Thank
Senator
you.
Wellness Siegel.
Good
for
to
all
see
your
everyone. Okay. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, back to our remaining public speakers.
Great, thank you. So I have the next set of speakers up. Darlene Lutz, David Mulkins, Rachel, and Dorina Nguyen. So we'll start with Darlene, if you're ready.
Thank you, Eugene. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for the time. I'm Darlene Lutz, Vice President of the First Precinct Community Council. The Community Council holds a public meeting with the NYPD precincts the last Thursday of the month. Our next meeting is Thursday, April 27th at 6 p.m. It's in person and at the precinct's house. I will put this in the chat along with my contact info. Community Board 2 is served by 4 police precincts. The first covers the territory from the west side of Broadway to West Street and the south side of Houston down to the north side of Canal Street. In other words, this is USoho and west of Soho. This same area is also served by neighborhood coordination officers in Sector D. You can see it on my map, that's in red. They hold a meeting every 3 months. The next meeting will be in July. Those details are TBD. Last, as a resident, I'd like to thank Traffic and Trans Chair Shirley Segunda, Parks Chair Rich Capopolo, and the myriad of others for organizing all the players and the report that is on CB2 site on the work being done, and more forthcoming in my front yard, which is adjacent to Duarte Square. Happy 420 to all who celebrate. Thanks and good evening.
Thank you, Darlene. I see no hands, so next speaker is?
Next speaker is David Mulkins.
Hi, I'm David Mulkins, President of the Bowery Alliance of Neighbors.
And we urge Community Board 2 to deny the expansive license being sought for 138 Bowery. This bold push for a 4-floor indoor-outdoor all-night 800-person capacity network of club and entertainment venue has rightly sent shockwaves among local residents who view these plans as a severe threat to their quality of life. The neighborhood that surrounds 138 Bowery is a residential community with families living directly behind the building, on either side of the building, and in many of the buildings nearby, there are single-room occupancy residents. This location is not appropriate as a place for the throngs of revelers who would most certainly be storming down sidewalks, making untold amounts of noise until all hours, and congesting what is already a very congested street. Community Board 2's SLA did vote to deny this application, and we urge the full board to support their denial. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no hands, so the next speaker.
So the next speaker is Rachel. Rachel McLean.
Yes, hi. So I'm Rachel McLean. Just turn my video on. I'm part of the Elizabeth Broome Block Association and opposing 138 Bowery, the GG Group application. Thank you first, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you all. So I live on Elizabeth Street and work from home in one of the many residential buildings that directly face the back of 138. I look onto the building daily. I'm exposed to the noise and obviously very familiar with the neighborhood, having first lived here in 1994. So throughout this process, I have been present for at least 4 of the meetings with the applicant, in order to find common ground. Unfortunately, it resulted in no significant changes on their end. And many factors with the application continue to be unclear and constantly change regarding plans for sound control, traffic hours, ownership, configuration of the interior, the location of external mechanical equipment, hotel operations versus the club operations, and who's accountable and responsible for when issues arise related to the club at night. So the application hours, they're still requesting for operation license from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m., 7 days a week. And this is in a residential area. So there's about 4 hours where there would be, closure of this event between the hours of, 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. So there are over 450 residents just directly behind 138 Bowery on the Elizabeth Street side. So I just want to give a bit of context into what this neighborhood is exposed to that live here. It seems very
15
quiet.
seconds.
But it's oversaturated. There's already 8 restaurants, 8 clubs within this 1 block radius. They all back onto, the sound corridor behind this building. So there's a great concern to the neighborhood. The traffic is already congested. And again, the decision to oppose is in support of the community that lives here, already impacted by this, oversaturation of nightclubs and late night bars. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No questions. So the next speaker.
Next speaker is Dorina Yuen. And then
Hi.
after Dorina will be Mickey McGee, Leaf Arntzen, and then Michelle Campo.
Thank you, Eugene. Dorina Yen, representing members of the Elizabeth House condominium. Thank you, Rachel, for representing Elizabeth Broome Block Association. I also am speaking on behalf of the Elizabeth Street Association, ICE members of the ICE House condo, and Little Italy Neighborhood Association. So thank you, committee members and full board members, for listening to us and being our advocates when at times it really feels like we have no one. We strongly oppose the application from GG Group at 138 Bowery. In a rare move, District 1 Councilperson Christopher Marte and Assemblyperson Grace Lee spoke in opposition to this application ahead of committee resolution. So it represents really the voices of their constituents. The operations manager, Jono Mason of 138 Bowery, has stated in several of the community meetings we have had outside of the community board meetings, definitely, and I quote, definitely a nightclub vibe with late night shows starting at 2:30 a.m. That's starting at 2:30 a.m. with a 644 occupancy and a rooftop bar with the potential near 24-hour of noise and activity of deliveries and cleaning crews, right? If they close at 4, there are people still throwing out trash, cleaning up, doing all those things, right? Crowds of this size and noise in or out cannot be contained. Just last week, there was thumping noise that kept us up till 4 in the morning. It came from down the block. We were trying to figure out where. And we landed on Capital. Capital is down the block. Can you imagine how horrible it would be if it's right outside our windows? And right outside this window here is a corridor, as Rachel mentioned, of about 450 residents that live directly behind 138 Bowery. And that would be just a huge compression of our already compressed quality of life issues, noise, and oversaturation. Just a few of the neighboring businesses with full liquor license directly across from 138 Bowery, the Moxie. Its adjacent liquor licenses are Casa Bocado, the Garrett, the Randolph, and then standing in front of 138 Bowery, you can see the rooftop, rooftop 93. You can see the outdoor lobby bar down at Citizen M. Just standing there, you can see all this oversaturation. And I think one thing that was really disheartening is that the owner, Ryan Urban, has repeatedly said, you know, he wants to be part of his hometown, or he wants to like put his stamp on his hometown.
Thank you, Dorina. I think your
I'm
time
sorry,
is
you're
up.
gonna have to wrap it up.
Okay. So thank you so much. We believe there is no path for this type of venue or this type of operator who's shown his true colors with his intimidation tactics and their inability to work with the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no questions. So, next, is there a next speaker?
Yes, there are several. So next, Leif Arntzen, and then Mickey McGee, and then Michelle Campo. So Leif or Mickey, one of you can go first.
You'll have to unmute yourself though. Mr. Arntzen, you have to unmute yourself.
Leif Arntzen.
We cannot hear you.
Mickey, I think you've gotten,
Mickey,
you're unmuted.
I'll go ahead, and I'm sure Leif will sort out his audio. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Janine Kiley, for your leadership, and congratulations, Susan, on your election. Fantastic. I work with South Village Neighbors, and our local group is part of a coalition, Queue Up, that includes more than 30 community-based organizations around the city that have been working to respond to the open restaurants issues. We know the City Council is now considering legislation that could make many of the worst provisions of the open restaurants program permanent, as in permanent forever. Among the issues in that legislation that are troubling are the continuation of roadway sheds for up to at least 18 more months, potentially through October 31st of 2024. Not 2023. The allowance of open facades, blasting music and crowd noise into the streets and into adjacent homes, even in residential neighborhoods with no time limits on those hours. That is to say, none outside of SLA time limits. Continued roadbed dining with no clear plan for street sweeping. And perhaps most troubling to us is the continued lack of concern about the proliferation of outdoor dining, the density of outdoor dining in neighborhoods such as those found in CB2. CB2, as you know, now has more than 1,000 outdoor dining sites. That's nearly twice the number in the entire borough of the Bronx. CB2 has 680 outdoor dining sites per square mile. That made sense in an emergency. but now it is a public subsidy of private business, and it is a blight upon our neighborhoods, as many of you know. Today, I'm here to share a bit about QUP's new community blueprint for outdoor dining that is just out. It calls for improvements to.
Mickey, I'm
and
gonna have to ask you to wrap it up though.
Okay, here's the wrap up. Improvements to and an expansion of the pre-pandemic Sidewalk Cafe program. And I'm happy to tell you more about it. I know my time's up, and I'll put a link in the chat.
That would be great. Thank you. I see Donna does have a question.
Yeah, Mickey, I just want to know, could you just very briefly just bullet point elaborate on that blueprint?
That would be great. Thank you. Yeah, reasonable time limits on restaurant density in residential neighborhoods that encourage restaurant investment in the outer boroughs. Because right now we have restaurant investment in our neighborhood extensively, but very little happening in the Bronx and in other outer borough areas. So we would like to see that happen. We'd like to see sensible closing hours in all residential areas to mitigate the impact of the crowd noise and the amplified music. We'd like to see climate-friendly restrictions on heating and air conditioning. The outdoors do not need to be heated or cooled. An equitable role for community boards and cafe licensing. As many of you know, there is a reduction in the time for community boards to review applications in the current draft legislation. Clear pedestrian pathways with a minimum of 12-foot wide sidewalks for dining setups, and a return of the program's oversight to the Department of Consumer Affairs and Worker Protections, which did a great job of running it. And as I said, we'll put a link in the chat with more information. Thank you so much.
That would be great. Thank you. Mr. Arnson.
Yes, hi. Thank you, CB2, for all your hard work. And just to follow up with Mickey's words, I just have this to say. The bill before City Council coming up for a vote does not contain protections for residents that we have every right to expect. When they pass it, they will also revert to the zoning text amendment from last year, which removes virtually every commercial zoning restriction meaningful to residents. The sheer volume of those changes is dense and far-reaching, and we as residents will find out the hard way for decades to come just how deeply we'll be affected should this bill pass as is. The community blueprint is the result of thousands of hours of work, meetings, Zooms, phone calls, trips to the neighborhoods all over the city. It contains real solutions to afford this industry to massively and permanently expand outdoors, but with reasonable accommodations and density that limit its negative impact upon residents and community, who rightfully wish to retain some reasonable means of healthy control and accountability for what happens in their neighborhoods. I urge all to push the community blueprint to every channel of influence available. I sincerely believe that our city council members need all the help and information they can possibly manage to absorb. Whatever we do and decide will affect us for many decades, and there is no reason we can't get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no questions. Next speaker is?
Next speaker is Michelle Campo.
Hi, thank you, Community Board, for this opportunity. I just want to speak shortly about, and if my computer shuts off, it's because it's dying, but aside from that, I'm with the, I was with the Bowery Elizabeth Lena Coalition that spoke several times to the Gaia 138 Bowery GG group large event space. We spoke a few times and we had discussions which always seemed to come just to understand what the whole puzzle that of their application was, because nobody could quite make it out. It was so confusing and it kept going back to square one basically. And at the end I said, well, just put it in writing. We couldn't meet anymore and would see them at the meeting. Day before the meeting, everybody else has spoken about everything. So I just want to bring this up. The day before the meeting, I got a letter, an email of intimidation from these applicants, slanderous. And I didn't share it with anyone at first, and then I decided I should. And because it is such, to try to intimidate members of the community from speaking puts a really bad scare into some people. not myself, apparently. And what I'm trying to bring out here in my roundabout way is this says a lot about the applicants that they would do something like this. I think this is really beyond shameful. This is a group, this is an organization that has to resort to stuff like this and intimidate members of the community. What kind of thing would they be putting on? Who else belongs to this, to the partner?
10 seconds.
No, but I think it's really, really, it's beyond shameful. And I don't think they should have the permission to open anything.
Thank you.
At least.
Thank you. I see a question from Susanna.
No, sorry, that's a mistake.
Okay, no questions. Next speaker.
Okay, so the next two speakers, Christina Bufala and then Zach Weinstein. And then I think that's it for the public speakers. So if there is anyone else that I've missed, please put your hand up on the attendee list. But next is Christina.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Christina Bucola. I am a resident of 130 Jane Street. I am also work in the neighborhood, and I have a little bit of a concern. There's a lot next door to our building, and you know, it's been owned, excuse me, for a while. This is one of the, if you live in the West Village, you'll be familiar with those empty lots that house Caribe vans, the long gone restaurant in any event. We knew that this lot was going to get developed. However, the way that it's being developed is of curiosity and concern to me. Namely, the building plans or renderings aren't the only thing I've seen contemplate something that is completely out of step with how other buildings in this area, and by buildings in this area, I'm specifically meaning buildings west of Washington that of course are carved out of landmark, right? How buildings, other buildings have been constructed and their plans and what's going on with this building. This lot is going to not allow for any setback between the two buildings, that being 130 Jane Street and the building immediately next to it. There is going to be some kind of internal courtyard, but it's my understanding that the entirety of the front of the building will run the entirety of the lot on Jane Street, and there will be a 12-story private elevator for garages. And so this is completely out of step with how other buildings have been built. I know that there is quite a bit of support to look into this. I couldn't corral everyone for this evening, so I apologize for that. But is there any way that you can start to look into the zoning of this, whether or not there is a gas tank? Because some of the COAs indicate that there is a gas tank underneath this lot. They could have been misfiled. It's unclear to me. And how it is that it's allowing to be built so that there isn't this 40-foot setback. We see it across the street in between 111 Jane and 99 Jane. We see it Superior Inc. And the building immediately to the east of that. Thank you so much for looking into this. And I promise to come next month. This is of some urgency. There are porta potties already on site.
Thank you. Thank you. The next speaker is Zach.
Questions? The next speaker is Zach.
Hi, yeah, my name's Zach Weinstein. I'm with Save Ganswort and live at 92 Horatio Street. I'm here to give an update on the status of the Link NYC 5G towers. And actually, I think I may have some good news about this. As you know, 9 of these futuristic 3-story tall towers are currently proposed for CB2, 7 of which are in the West Village. Despite the January CB2 resolution asking for a moratorium on construction of these towers, foundations for 2 towers on Washington Street were poured back in February. Thanks to the efforts of our local elected officials, and particularly Eric's office, construction was paused, but we've been told that it could resume at any time. Now, one of the hopes we had for stopping these towers was that they was a Section 106 review as required by the National Historic Preservation Act. Section 106 requires review of any project that is funded or licensed by a federal agency and that is within or adjacent to a historic district or a structure listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And such a review is supposed to occur before construction begins. Now, there's been no review. No one I spoke to could figure out why. I and the various historic preservation organizations have been sending letters to FCC asking for such a review. Jerry Nadler sent a letter last week. And just today, FCC sent a letter to City Bridge saying that there must be a Section 106 review before the Link NYC 5G tower project can proceed. This is really good news because the regulations mandate robust public participation. The review must study cumulative impacts of towers proposed now and in the foreseeable future. This review must include towers adjoining historic districts and landmarks, not just those within the historic districts. Now, the review is going to be led by the State Historic Preservation Office. I look forward to learning more about how the process will work. And I hope that there will be a way for CB2 to participate actively as this process moves forward. I wanted to let folks know that this is coming down the pike. And I think that it's something which may have a great deal, a very positive impact for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Will.
I just wanted to say thank you to Zach for all of the tireless work you've been putting in on this issue. So thanks so much.
It's been a lot of work, and a lot of other people and organizations have been pushing it as well.
Great. Okay. Eugene, are there more speakers or are we done?
I think we are done with the public session. I do not see any other speakers. I do see Nicole has her hand up, but she's here
right,
for Clotcher.
Okay. But before that, I will take a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Okay, and I assume there's a second for that? Okay. So moved. Okay, if there are no abstentions or recusals, I guess everyone in favor. Okay, I will take that as a yes. Okay, now reports from the representatives of our elected officials. If you would please all raise your hands so we can promote you to panelists. Okay, here they come. And who do I see first? Up here now. And who wants to start? Nicole, you start?
I would love to start. Good
Go right
evening,
ahead.
everybody. Good evening, everybody. Just a few quick reminders from Councilmember Botcher's office. He was intending on being here tonight, but unfortunately didn't quite make it. So hoping for next month. I also want to take a quick opportunity to say thank you to Zach also for his amazing work on the 5G towers. He's really been working very hard on this on behalf of everybody in our area, in the CB2 area. We have next Wednesday a conversation with Alvin Bragg. I will put the registration information in the chat box, so anyone who wants to join is welcome. Everybody is welcome. I also want to throw out reminders that we have a SCREE and DREE clinic once a month. We also still have our housing clinic once a month. I encourage people to spread that news and send people our way. I'll also put information in the chat on that. And just want to remind everybody that Eric introduced some legislation this month that moving forward as always on the fight against garbage and on the side of sanitation. Currently, we only have 2 hours, 2 one-hour periods during the day that the Department of Sanitation can issue tickets for unclean sidewalks or curbs. So he has introduced legislation to expand those hours so that we can hold commercial property owners responsible for those who fail to maintain the front of their properties. And I think that's really all I have for tonight. So I welcome any questions that you have.
Okay, I don't see any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Ian Wang?
Hi, everyone. So I just have 2 quick community updates on my end. One is regarding 111 Mott Street, the building that's been issued a full vacate order because of the collapsing the crumbling facade. We are still actively working with all the residents in the building. Most of the residents are living in rent stabilized units in that building. So, the best case scenario is everyone can move back into their apartment, but some of them want to break their lease, which is understandable. And we're working with Manhattan Legal Service to help these tenants to at least get their security deposit back. And we have also been trying to contact the owner of the building, but the building owner is not super responsive. Some of the residents want to take HP action against the building owner. So we're also helping them to connect them with Manhattan Legal Service and the DA's office. Also, there have been burglary cases in the building, and the 5th Precinct is actively looking into that. So we're also connecting these residents with the 5th Precinct. Some of their items have already been retrieved by the 5th Precinct. So we want to thank all the 5th Precinct's officers' hard work. The tenants will be able to retrieve their items shortly. And the second update is that our office got a lot of feedback from the community regarding the sanitation issue on Marbury Street. So the council member have extended ACE, which is a program that have currently or formerly homeless individuals to clean up street. The council member have extended this program to Marbury Street between Houston and Canal. So hopefully the street will be a lot cleaner in the future. And our office is also actively taking suggestions from the community. So if anyone has any suggestions or opinion about which street that need to be cleaned, definitely let us know, and we can reach out to ACE or other street cleaning organizations to have them do more street cleaning.
Thank you. Cormac?
Yes, hi, and thank you, Ian. I'm wondering, I meant to ask this of Nicole as well, but things move fast if you're not paying attention here. Can you speak? We just heard earlier, you probably heard from Q Up New York's proposals to reform the current, basically, everything industry wants, however they want it, bill on outdoor dining. Does Councilman have a position on the upcoming vote or the upcoming bill?
As far as I know, the language of that bill have not been finalized yet. So I think once we get a finalized language, I will discuss with the council member, and we'll definitely, let the community know. And in the meantime, we're also talking to Q Up. We're talking to lots of community members to take their suggestions, and we're actively communicating with the bill drafting department to let them know what the community think. But as far as I know, there's no finalized language yet.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, next, Betsy Schmidt from Representative Goldman's office.
Yep. Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to share a few things that Rep. Goldman has been working on, really mostly addressing some issues we've been seeing in the community. He recently wrote a letter to the Postmaster General Joy, urging him to address the rise in mail theft from USPS mailboxes, especially in New York. We've gotten a lot of complaints about this. And so on the board report that I put in the chat, you can see that how you can deal with it. You can reach out to your local precinct. There's also a hotline and a website to report mail theft. I also want to address, we've been seeing a really large number of cases with passports in our office. So we've put a few tips how to make sure you don't get caught, having to come to us right before a trip without a passport, trying to get one. And mostly that just starts with checking your passport now. And if you're thinking about leaving the country anytime this year, just go ahead and you're going to want to renew your passport now. And if you do have trouble, you've already renewed it, and you're 2 weeks out from a trip, that is the moment to reach out to us, not the day before your trip, 2 weeks out. And we can usually get that expedited and get that sent to you through the mail in time. I also just want to highlight that we also have an art competition that is going until May 1st. So any student who lives or goes to school in the district, they can apply. Again, the link is on the board report, but also on our website, goldman.house.gov. And then just a few other things. The nonprofit security grant program is up for a little while longer. And you can apply for communities that, yep, my food is here. Thank you. Of course, exactly at the moment that that's what's happening. Because I'm still at the office. Okay. So the nonprofit security grant program for groups that have any kind of hate crime against them, you can apply for funding to keep that safe. We've also worked for rental assistance with Congresswoman Waters and Ayanna Pressley. Yeah, we'll leave it there since I'm doing so good. But yeah, reach out on our website if you need anything.
Great, thank you. Dr. Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy. Would you be kind enough to put your information in the chat?
Yes, I'll put our link to our board report and to all of our stuff goes through our management system on our website. I also am not the normal person.
Can you put yours? Can you put your a way to contact you directly? Is more specific is my question.
I will put my name and our phone number in the chat. I'm just letting you know I am not the normal person for Manhattan CB2.
Oh, you're not. Okay, so then why don't you make the announcement? So put in whoever that person is, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, I saw Roy Ruiz.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Sorry for the sirens. Well, as Senator Hoyerman Siegel was mentioning earlier, the budget still hasn't passed and it got extended. So looks like it's going to be a busy week next week. As some of you might have heard, the governor requested to change the timeline for New York State that New York State uses to calculate greenhouse emissions from 20 to 100 years to largely reduce the costs that are associated with the changes that we need to make for our climate goals. And so the assembly member came out in opposition of that plan. You know, the state spends billions of dollars in recovery from major storms, and we have a major storm just about every year now. Insurance costs are going up and we need to do something about climate change. So we are very strong. And on that note, and tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Foley Square, there's going to be a rally. There's a group of New Yorkers, young New Yorkers, it's called Fridays for Future, where they go out and rally after school for climate change, and we'll be there. Assemblymember Glick will be there. New York Renews will be there. Tree Age will be there. 6th Street Community Center will be there. So all in support of climate change. I am working on an event. It's a composting event with the Department of Sanitation, City Department of Sanitation. That's going to be on May 11th. At the AIDS Memorial, the St. Vincent's Triangle. So we'll be there with the mascot too, the the sanitation mascot. And I'm also working on an event that will be more for the future, maybe in the summer, with the MTA to help people understand and sign up for their Omni cards. So that will be more of an educational event that I'm working on. That's some of the updates that I have. I'll
Great.
be leaving the link to the report on the chat.
Yes, please do that.
All right.
Okay. Thank you. I see there is someone from the Manhattan DA's office here.
Hi, good evening. Yes, I'm Peter Say. I am the Community Engagement Liaison for Lower Manhattan. Good to see you again. I'll leave my contact information in the chat. Just some quick updates. The Manhattan District Attorney and the other district attorneys from the 5 boroughs are holding their 30th annual Survivors Victims Vigil this Saturday at the West End Collegiate Church on West 77th Street. I'll put the information in the chat if anybody wants to attend. Other updates I want to share with you in line with what Senator Hoyleman was speaking about. Until they get legislation to give some teeth to the Office of Cannabis Management, our office is continuing to work with the landlords to try and evict, start eviction proceedings in as many of these cannabis shops as possible. Think I'll have more figures to share maybe next month, but we have about 8 proceedings moving forward at this point. Also share what Senator Hoyleman said about the scams and the drugs with the club goers. This week, the Manhattan District Attorney did announce 4 arrests, and hopefully there'll be more to come. And as far as what's going on in Albany, our office is continuing to work to push for discovery reform. So let's see what the results will be. I'm here for any questions. And like I said, I'll put all this information that I just discussed on the chat for anybody that's interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have a question from Susanna.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. Are landlords not liable for having tenants that are breaking the law with unpermitted businesses?
Well, that's the gist of this program that we're working with the mayor's office on. Okay, operating a cannabis store is, if you're not licensed, and there's very few licensed cannabis stores out there, is illegal. So the first step is to advise the landlords that they need to start eviction proceedings. If they don't, we're a shop of lawyers and we're ready to step in to start those proceedings. But the first step was to notify the landlords that they need to evict them.
And they're not liable to fines if they don't, or liable to fine for having signed a lease with them in the first place?
Nothing on the books for that.
Thank you.
Rocio.
Can you please tell us what is the time frame when someone brings a lawsuit, such as getting rid of a commercial tenant who is violating the terms of their lease? Most standard leases say that you're not allowed to conduct illegal business in the premises that you rent. So can you tell us what is the timeline when someone files, hiring an attorney to file the paperwork in court to stop the nuisance that would be a result of doing illegal work, illegal sales at a premises, to the time when the court finally gets around to deciding the case? And as from experience, I know that the courts are very backed up. So what are you going to do to help property owners get rid of tenants that are violating the laws and their leases?
Okay, well, that's a lengthy process. I wouldn't have the timeline to review with you right now, but I'll note that information and we can sidebar and I can get it back to you.
It is a very long process. It's a very long process for any kind of nuisance case
Correct.
in court.
I think I agree. We agree with that, but at this point, it goes to the point of what Senator Hoyerman says. The Office of Cannabis Management right now doesn't have the teeth to take the lead with this. We can all hope that they're given the tools necessary to do what everybody envisions them to be, and they would have to be the lead moving forward. But in the meantime, until that's done, anything we can do to help, which is what we're doing right now.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tsay.
Okay.
Next would be, I guess, Stacy Johnson from Senator Kavanaugh's office.
Hello, yeah, I'm so sorry that Senator Kavanaugh can't be here. As we've heard a few times already, the budget keeps getting extended, and we thought Brian was going to be back and ready for this meeting, but he's not here. But I wanted to go through a few of the things he's been working on up in Albany. Of course, there's the budget. It's important to note that he's been pushing hard for the housing access voucher program as well as good cause eviction. And there was an op-ed that he co-wrote in Cranes recently about the importance of the housing access voucher program. The ask in the budget is $250 million for that program. He's also been pushing hard to make sure that NYCHA is included in ERAP because ERAP has been giving money out to private tenants, but hasn't gone down the list of all the NYCHA residents who have not been able to pay rent during the pandemic. So there's a backlog of those cases. And then some other things that are not budget related is there's a bill, it's 6055A, and it's to try to eliminate 5 food additives. And they're mostly the kinds of additives you would find in candy or like packaged baked goods. And a lot of them have to do with endocrine disruption. So there's a bill to try to eliminate those 5 ingredients, and California is doing the same thing. So New York and California are both trying to ban those 5 ingredients. And there was an article in the New York Times on April 13th about that. There's another one, it's 6327, and it's trying to establish new targets for offshore wind electricity generation. And it's in the Energy and Telecommunications Committee right now. Another bill that he's sponsoring and pushing for is 6105, and it is to require producer responsibility for the collection and recycling of refrigerants and refrigerant containing appliances. And so that's also in committee. It's in the Environmental Conservation Committee. And lastly, 643A is a battery recycling bill that includes lithium ion batteries. So it would be similar to his carpet recycling bill. It would be a battery recycling bill so that the people who make the batteries would also be responsible for having a recycling program for those batteries. And that's also in the Environmental Conservation Committee right now. So those are some things that we're going to look forward to working on after the budget. And I wanted to say it was so nice to meet a lot of you in person. Congratulations, Susan, for the new chair role. And it was nice to know that there's all these chairs that I got to meet during the tour of the NYU Paulson Center. And I just thought it was a really healthy sign that there's like a rotating cast of chairs at CB2. So I just wanted to say that I see that as a really good sign. It's not the same person for 20 years, right? Every couple of years you switch. So I just think that's so nice. And you guys have been talking a lot about cannabis. I wanted to say what we've been told by the Office of Cannabis Management is to email them when we see a store that's illegal and to include as much information as possible. So they want to know the types of products that are being sold, the name of the landlord and the name of the business owners, any hanging licenses that they have, like, you know, how you might have a business license hanging behind the counter. So any kind of license that they do have hanging up. If there's any sales going on to children, And if any of the products have labels from other states, if like any of the cannabis products have labels that say that they're coming from like Colorado where cannabis is legal. So those are the types of things they say to collect in terms of information and then to email them. And I can put the email in the chat, but maybe this is something you all knew before, but I thought I would share that information with you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, a great addition to the chat. Yes, Lucio.
Thank you so much for coming, Stacy. I have a very quick question, which is, does the senator read and realize all the negative effects good cause eviction will have, not only on property owners, but on the tenants as well? There's a lot of things being said that are not true, and a lot of things that people don't talk about, the negative effects, what good cause eviction will do for this real estate business.
Yeah, I haven't heard about any negative effects in our office.
Wow, you better wake up. I'm sorry.
Okay, Lucio.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cormac.
Yeah, I just wonder if the senator, Stacy, if the senator would consider a little bit, this is an example of the problem with a regulatory framework that expects the enforcement to be done by the citizenry rather than by, adequately staffed and empowered regulatory bodies. Because this was, and I have no issue against the cannabis law, whatever, generally, but this was something that critics said would happen, right? Was that the cannabis office would end up having everybody who's out there in the communities have to go and get all the information and lobby and bring it and call in to make sure enforcement happens, like we all have to do on so many community things here in New York, since New York is basically dismantled oversight and regulation and enforcements. And here it has happened again. And I just want to suggest maybe the senator wants to keep this example in mind as other bills and ideas come forward about the importance of having appropriate and robust enforcement authorities and mechanisms in place and thinking through how that works.
Yeah,
and you guys, a pleasure to meet you the other day.
yeah, I'll share that example with him for sure. I know he and Hoylman and other, everyone is very frustrated by the situation, but I think it is a really good example. And it's not the first example of when the city asks us to go and do the work. I hear you.
Okay, thank you. I see that Samantha Day from Assemblymember Lee's office is here.
Yes, hi. Congratulations, Susan, and thank you again to Janine for her leadership. My name is Samantha, and I am chief of staff to Assemblymember Lee. She also sends her regrets that she couldn't be here today. She also is tied up with the budget as that process is ongoing. It seems like, as a few of our colleagues have implied, next week will be a busy week, although I don't know when this process will be over. In terms of things that Assemblymember Lee has been really focused on the budget, one of her main priorities was working with Senator Kavanaugh for the inclusion of ERAP funding for public and subsidized housing residents. I'm hearing that that is still on the table, so we're feeling hopeful about the possibility of that being included. The other major item that she was leading during the budget process is funding for the AAPI community for organizations serving Asian communities throughout the state and Asian-led organizations throughout the state as part of the Equity Budget Coalition. That is still on the table as well. So we're hoping that those two items will make it through to the end of the budget. Other thing that I wanted to mention is we worked with Assemblymember Glick's office to introduce a bill last week to try to make it easier for office conversions that are above the 12 FAR cap to be turned into residential with the inclusion of a 40% affordable guarantee if that process is done. So we are working with her on getting that introduced, getting a bill number for that, but I did want to mention, since I know that there was a question about that earlier. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention, I know this is not in CB2, it's in CB1, but I did want to make sure that you're aware that last night we were told that the DCC issued a permit for the demolition of the Manhattan Detention Complex in Chinatown, and that, you know, if that construction is moving forward, that'll have a significant impact on Chinatown and the surrounding area. That permit was issued despite a promise for a follow-up meeting with our office and other elected offices after a meeting a few weeks ago. And so there will be a press conference at 12 p.m. on Saturday. If anybody lives in the area and is interested, that will be attended by all of our offices. And I think there'll be a process to follow.
Okay, thank you. No questions. So let's say Andrew Chang.
Good evening, everybody. Andrew Chen here from the Manhattan Borough President's Office. I have 3 quick things I want to announce. First, we launched a form on our website for the public to identify sites that that could be developed into potential affordable housing. As you all may know, we released a Housing Manhattanites plan several months ago in January. So the form on our website will allow you, the individual, the resident, to suggest lots and sites that could be used for affordable housing in the future. Secondly, this was mentioned last month, but we released a report regarding the scaffolding and sidewalk sheds all throughout New York City. We talked about how the scaffolding laws are very complicated. Once scaffolding has been set up, it's not really temporary. It's up there for many years. And these sidewalk sheds and scaffolding detract from pedestrian experience. They affect quality of life. They're poorly lit and maintained. So I will put the link to our report in the chat regarding what can be done to help take down and expedite the removal of these sidewalk sheds and scaffolding. And then lastly, the borough president testified in support of Right to Counsel, a law that he introduced during his time in the city council, which provides a lawyer to those facing eviction in housing court. Unfortunately, due to the avalanche of eviction cases, tenants are struggling to get legal representation. That is why the Manhattan Borough President is calling on the state courts to slow the calendaring of housing cases if the tenant does not have an attorney. And that's all I have to report. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Andrew. I see no questions. Okay, is there any elected representative that I missed? Okay, then we're done with the reports. Okay, let me now give you my report. First, I want to remind everybody we still do not have an assistant secretary. The nominations will be open until, according to the bylaws, the Friday before the next board meeting. It is a great opportunity for people to get involved and see how the board runs. And it's, you know, many of us have done it, and hoping somebody will step up and nominate themselves for assistant secretary. Second item, any of our members who have reapplied for the board but have not yet had their interview, the window for scheduling an interview is rapidly closing. If you don't have an interview, the borough president cannot consider your application for your reapplication for board membership. So anybody who's in that situation, please schedule that as soon as possible. NYU is accepting, now that the Paulson Center is done, NYU is now accepting applications from nonprofit entities for the community facility space. It's 750 square feet of raw space. It's at 181 Mercer Street. If anybody has any interest, you can contact the office and we will give you more information about it. Let's see. I Zach Weinstein mentioned the fact that the FCC is now going to be investigating. It's going to require a hearing regarding the 5G towers, which is great news. It just came out today. The idea that the historic, there was no investigation with regards to historic district, of course, impacts us disproportionately, but there will be, I'm sure, more to follow, and we should thank Congressman Nadler for his efforts on that part. And there were just two resolutions that I really and particularly want to call out. One is, of course, is 388 Hudson. There's the Land Use Committee did a great job on a really important resolution. The issue of this is an exceptional site for us. It is a very rare opportunity to create affordable housing, and the goal is, of course, to get the city to recognize that we need as much development there, to acknowledge that there is 25,000 square feet of developable space, and that we really need to take advantage of it. And the second one is from the Quality of Life Committee. I really personally want to thank everybody for, there was an application from the new Cannabis Museum. They wanted to do an outdoor event, and the committee successfully persuaded them that the risks in terms of security based on their planned program were really carried too much of a risk, so they did cancel it. And I think that was really great advocacy. So thank you, Will, and thank you to that committee. And that is my report. So next we have the treasurer's, the treasurer's report, please. So we have.
Hello, this is this quarter's treasurer's report. Just a few updated numbers. The bulk of it is sort of to our professional services, which includes our consultant Francine, and also for our streaming services. So if you look at the budget, it's a little bit over because we didn't anticipate that earlier on when we set the budget back in the fall. And we also have slightly over budget in tech subscriptions and services, only because recently we did do a job posting back in the fall as well, and didn't anticipate that. Bulk of our expenditures all the way till June, we're expecting $103,000 for staff services, and then 7,000-ish in terms of other than temporary personnel services, meaning office supplies and copy machine services as well. And that is the report for this quarter.
Great, thank you. District Manager's report.
Good evening, everybody. And I will get better at this timer thing, so thank you for your indulgence tonight. Jumping right in, considering the hour, the open meetings law, hot off the presses. I learned just as the meeting was starting that the open meetings law extension has been extended, or is in the process of being extended by the mayor's office for another 30 days. How many more of those extensions is the subject of conjecture and not known at this point. We also are grateful to both the Borough President's Office and Beta NYC for supporting us and helping us figure out what the next event will be, what kind of a portable system of equipment that we can bring from venue to venue so that we can hopefully have engage the public in a hybrid and in-person way. Shifting gears to the Department of Sanitation, the rules for when you're allowed to put your trash on the curb have already changed. It used to be that it could not be out before 4 o'clock. Now it cannot be out before 8 o'clock in the evening. And there's been some pushback about that. One important thing to know is that if you have a solid container with a secured lid instead of those bags, then you can put your trash out at 6 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock. That might be important to buildings whose staff's schedules have to change. Happy to talk more about that offline, but I thought I should mention it because in the month of April, the regulations change. They will start issuing violations starting on May 1st. You will probably hear about participatory budgeting results from your council members. Important note that there is also a borough by borough wide participatory budgeting process being run. More on that offline if you want to know. But that voting will take place coming up, I believe, in May, maybe from May into June. There's also another category. The important thing about that one, by the way, is that the borough-wide money that's available on PB is expense money. So running a program, hiring a person, as opposed to the council members, which is capital money that's building a facility or buying equipment. And then last thing is I'll put in the chat a link to be able to comment on a revision to the omnibus community development block grant for disaster recovery. Has to do with funding from HUD, federal funding from HUD, and how it'll be allocated for things like housing, economic recovery, infrastructure, and especially mitigation and resiliency. I'll put the link for the comments to that in the chat, and comments may be received through May 23rd. That's my report. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, we are now going to go into business session.
Question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lucille.
Thank you, Mark, for your explanation regarding the sanitation new rules that went in effect on April 1st. It is my understanding, however, that you cannot put your garbage out at 6 o'clock, even if you have it in the containers, if you did not sign up your building, and the building consists of 8 units or more. But if you didn't sign up, you still have to wait till 8 o'clock. It seems to me, it seems to me that if they really wanted to control the garbage situation, they would have what they used to have, which is 6 days of pickup. The garbage would not accumulate. The garbage should be picked up by 8 o'clock at night, put out by 4, picked up by 8, so the rats don't have midnight buffet. But that's nothing to do with you. But if you do speak to the sanitation people, tell them that this is the reason so much garbage piles up is because there's not enough collection. And real estate businesses are the ones that pay most of the taxes that will fund public places like public sanitation, police, schools, and all that. So we need more pickups so that we don't have this, and rat-proof containers so the rats don't get into the street containers.
Okay, so if I may respond quickly, there is a way to apply for a waiver from the 8 o'clock rule, but that does not relate to the 6 o'clock rule. I got that just this morning from the Department of Sanitation on a Zoom with the Soho Broadway initiative. You are correct that if we stop feeding them, maybe they'll go elsewhere. And there is consideration with respect to building owners that is being worked out. This is something that we will highlight at the district service cabinet next month. I actually had it on the agenda for this past month, but DSNY was unfortunately unable to come. And my last point is that might be something that somebody on the board might want to suggest with respect to funding for the DSNY so that they could have more frequent pickups. If the board were to make that a priority, we could then advocate for it. But that's for the board to decide, not for the district manager. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Okay, now we go into business section. And the next thing would be attendance. Whenever you're ready.
Yep. Sorry, I had trouble with my microphone. Susan Aaron?
Here, Susanna. Thank
Susanna
you.
Aaron, I'm sorry.
Fine.
Natasha Vanessens?
Here.
Akila Asqui? William Benesh?
Here.
Keen Berger?
Here.
Carter Booth?
Here.
Katie Bordenaro?
Here.
Anita Brandt?
Here.
I'm here. Rich Cacapolo?
Here.
John Paul DeVerna? Oh, I think he has to leave early. Okay, sorry. Chris Dignas?
Here.
Bob Ely?
Yes.
Mark Fitzgerald,
Here.
Stella Fitzgerald,
Here.
Cormac Flynn,
Here.
Susan Gammy,
Here.
David Gruber,
Here.
Wayne Cowadler,
Here.
Susan Kent,
Here.
Ryder Kessler,
Here.
Janine Kiley,
Here.
Patricia Laria,
Here.
Michael Levine,
Here.
Janet Liff,
Here.
Edward Ma, okay. Matt Metzger,
Here.
Daniel Miller,
Here.
okay. Juan Osorio,
Here.
Brian Pape,
Present.
Donna Raftery,
Here.
Lois Rakoff,
Present.
Bo Riccobono. I know you're here. I don't know if you can. Just put it in the chat if you are here. I know you had trouble with your microphone. Zach Roberts,
Here.
Robin Rothstein,
Here.
Rosia Sands,
Present.
Shirley Secunda,
Here.
Kristen Shea. Okay.
Here. I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Frederica Siegel.
Here.
Wait, hold on. Dr. Shirley Smith,
Present.
Chanel Spence,
Here.
Susan Wittenberg,
Here.
Anthony Wong,
Here.
Cheryl Wu,
Here.
Eugene Yu,
Present.
Adam Zeldin. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I will take a motion for the approval of the March minutes.
So moved. Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, standing committee reports. If there is no objection, we will continue with the practice of an omnibus vote. So the first committee is landmarks.
We have 3 resolutions, all were unanimous. There was a second meeting scheduled because of a late application arriving. If we have a Friday or a Monday before this meeting, we hear them on the Monday. And that applicant canceled, so that canceled the meeting. We didn't cancel the meeting just canceled itself. The 3 applications that we have, 17 West 9th Street, to construct a 1-story rooftop addition. It doesn't show, therefore it's not an issue. Therefore, be it resolved that CB2 Manhattan recommends approval of the non-visible rooftop addition at the rear of the house. Second application is 32 Jane Street. To return the house to historic single-family residence and alter the entryway, allowing the entry door to be level with the sidewalk with a window above. Add a stair bulkhead, modifications to the roof, and modifications to the rear facade windows. Approval of the restoration of the front facade and replacement of the double hung windows, that being the original windows, the original openings. Denial of the tall window above the entrance, which has no historic reference and introduces an unwelcome and out of scale modern element to the facade. That the masonry band above the ground floor be less prominent. Approval of the rooftop addition and rear facade. The third application, 56 West 12th Street, to restore the facade, replace all windows, construct a new stoop to match the historic original. Construct a rooftop penthouse addition, construct a step back rear yard addition that retains the rear historic cornice line, and 3 top floor window openings, and construct a lap pool in the backyard. we recommend approval of the front facade restoration in the windows, denial of the front steps unless it's determined that they cannot be redesigned to extend less far into the sidewalk. This is a question of a house that had stairs and a stoop originally, and since they were taken off years ago, a tree pit was put exactly where the foot of the stairs will be. And there's a question about passage in the sidewalk. It appears that there's no actual regulation. We're just trying to get it back as far as possible in order to leave as much sidewalk as possible. The denial of the proposed ironwork and that it be more aligned with other district examples and include rounded newel post as appropriate to the house. Approval of the lift. This is an ADA lift in the areaway, provided that a diligent effort be made to make it less intrusive by relocating the mechanical tower away from the front of the basement windows. Approval of the non-visible rooftop addition and cellar excavation. Approval of the mass of the rear yard extension and windows. Approval of the lap pool, noting that it occupies a modest amount of the garden and is not objectionably visible from the neighboring gardens. That's it.
Okay, does anybody, okay, want to call out anything? Rocio?
I don't want to call out anything, but I just want to say to Chanel Spence, thank you. Thank you so much for all the years of the hard work you have done. I really appreciate your dedication to this committee, and you've done a wonderful job. And I think many times we don't stop to say these things, but I think it's time that I tell you personally in front of everybody what a great job you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocio.
I second it.
Eugene? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Eugene?
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chanel. I wanted to actually propose an amendment for number 2, which is 32 Jane Street. I think we had discussed at the meeting to make a notation that 32 Jane Street, as it returns to a single family residence, represents a loss of 5 housing units in the West Village. So I'd like to propose text that we add another whereas clause.
We did not agree to that wording at the meeting, if you want to propose it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's an amendment, so we have to vote on it. Okay. Okay.
I'd like to
Is there
propose the
any
text.
I'm
I
sorry.
second it.
No, well, first, let's just, yeah, okay, it's seconded now. Is there any discussion on it?
Yes, I'd like to speak about it.
Okay,
So can you put the amendment language in the chat, please? So we can all see it.
Yes, I'll do that.
I'm sorry, Shanat, go ahead.
We had a discussion at a prior meeting about how to address the fact that often, but not always, conversions, most particularly of row houses, diminishes the number of units. We decided at that time that we would acknowledge that it was being put back to a one family because that is a landmark issue. The fact that it was once a divided house and is now a single family house. And that often dictates what's done to the outside of it. We decided not to go beyond that because it gets into issues that are not landmark issues. This came up with respect to something else that I would broadly describe as a social issue. And I had a talk with the Landmarks Commission representative, and they said that we should not introduce into the resolutions aspects of the application that did not deal with landmarks, for the good reason that by statute, the commission members, when they consider an application may not consider anything except the landmark aspect of the application. And for that reason, it would be inappropriate for us to bring such things as the loss of 5 apartments, whatever it is.
Frederica?
That's the reason that it is, and that was decided at a prior meeting, and as a sort of way going forward.
I can understand that, Chenault, and I feel that if we were to base our recommendation on that aspect, that would be inappropriate. But simply to add it to a whereas seems very in line to me with our aspirations for our neighborhood.
The point was that there are other places to address this.
And where would they be?
In the proper committee that deals with the loss of, with affordable housing, the loss of housing, the number of housing units and so forth.
So you're uncomfortable with even referencing it in the whereas section?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, that is a bit based on the guidance that we got from the commission. Because the resolution should flow from the what's the application, which is really fixed by the applicant, to the whereases, and then from all that a conclusion is reached that is the resolution itself.
Okay, so I defer to you, but I would say that our deliberations could include that, even though our conclusion wouldn't flow from that. So thank you.
But I would say that you could deliberate about it, but it would not be correct for that to influence the application before us for a landmark consideration.
Carter.
Yeah, thanks, Chanel. And I agree with Frederica. I mean, the commissioners bring up other stuff all the time. I mean, that's a sort of a head in the sand approach from the representatives of LPC. All the hearings I've watched, they bring up other issues all the time. And I think it's a monster mistake for us not to comment on it when it's a crisis facing the city. It's a mayoral agency and that needs to be tracked somewhere. And you're the only committee that reviews those applications. It's the only place where that notation would be made. I mean, it just seems odd to me that we wouldn't mention it as a fact. And the commissioners regularly consider other items. And in fact, you can even see that they were overturned on a recent court case as a result of that, but it was certainly part of their deliberation. We don't often have anybody present at LPC to argue our case, and I suspect that's why they may not often discuss that on the cases that we have before the LPC. Thanks.
I agree that we should put it in the resolution, just as a part of description. When you say it's returning to a one-family house, we could put in at the loss of these 5 units. That does not change the resolution, but it just is a descriptive, just like you would say something else. And I think it's very important to say. And of course, the landmark people don't want you to say it. They don't want anything like that, but we want to say it.
I would suggest that if we say it a bit more neutrally, that the conversion of a 5-family house to a single-family house, which is what's happening.
Okay, it's not a 5.
The loss begins to advocate and editorialize, which I understand perfectly we want to do, and I do too. But if we just if we're doing facts, we just simply say changing a 5-family house to a 1-family house or 5-apartment house or whatever you say.
Yes, yeah, I would accept that, but
Katie.
it's not 5
Okay,
families.
please, no back and forth.
Sorry.
Katie.
Well, I was just going to underline what Janet Lift put in the chat. If we don't put it in the landmarks resolution, you know, how does it get to another committee, either land use or maybe Susanna's committee? You know, have to get it somewhere. But if Chenault is going to put it into the resolution as a fact, I would still like the loss of affordable housing to be included. But if first steps, you know, just down that we're going from 5 dwelling units to 1 dwelling unit, that's, you know, that's a big step forward.
I will just point out that while Chenault can certainly advocate for his position, ultimately, if the majority wishes to make this change, then it ultimately goes in the resolution, just as a voted in amendment. Amy.
I agree with the sentiment of putting this in. I guess I know there's no back and forth, but I don't think, I just want to make sure I understand. Eugene, you're not saying that it should be denied. You're just saying that we should note that there's a lack of housing, and there's tight housing in our district, and that it just happens. These are not proposing this language that we will lose 5 more units. Is that right?
It's just that it's memorializing this because there is no other committee that this would regularly go through, and so that it seems that this is the only place where we have the visibility into this, and it happens. I'm not passing any judgment on whether it's a good or a bad thing. I'm simply stating it was a 5, it was actually a 5-family house plus the doctor's office. Now it's a single family house.
Yeah, and the reason I say that, I agree with Chenault that just writing that in such a way that it's clear that we're not objecting to this, but we are noting that there's a crisis of housing in our district and we're losing an additional 5 units in some way. That's all I'm saying.
Susanna?
I actually think it's problematic to add that. I mean, many of these houses that were 5-unit houses were originally built as single-family houses, and we are a historic district. So one could say that from a landmarks perspective, this house is being restored to its original intent. I mean, to its original design. I think that the question of whether we're going to take a position on people putting houses together and returning houses to single houses, I think that should be a separate issue. I don't think, I mean, I don't, it's not an issue that interests me particularly. I don't think that our housing problems are going to be solved by barring people from returning brownstones to being single family homes. And they're also not necessarily affordable housing anyway. But I think that if that's something that the board wants to take up, I think the land use committee should be taking it up, and I think it should be taking it up as its own issue. We are never going to be seeing applications of alterations to houses and being asked to judge them on the basis of whether they present a loss of dwelling units or not. So I don't support that amendment.
As a point of fact, there is no mention here of what their status is as affordable or market. It is simply a numerical identity.
Yes, no, I reckon, no, I know that. It's just my tricky thing is that we are a historic district and this is a landmarks committee, and its mandate is to opine on landmarks issues and not on land use issues.
Thank you. Dr. Smith.
Yeah, I just have a question, Chenault. Was this brought up during committee?
Yes, this is the wording that was agreed to.
And it was voted on unanimously by the committee member?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Michael?
Yes, in the meantime, we have a resolution on the floor, and I'm going to ask for a clarification when we vote. Are we voting to say that it has been going from 5 families to 1 family, or are we going to say the loss of 5 dwelling units? which is the version, if we vote for it, that would then become the amendment to the resolution? I
The
got it.
amendment is the language that was proposed by Eugene. If someone wishes to amend that, that is another amendment.
But that would be the
Well,
language.
not everyone can see the chat. Should we read it aloud or should Eugene
Yes,
read it
please
aloud?
do so. Please read the actual language.
Sure. So as it is in the chat, where is it? Yes, for 32 Jane Street, the return of this house to a single family represents a loss of 5 housing units. That's what I put in the chat for as an additional whereas clause.
So we're going with the language that says a loss of 5 housing units. Thank you.
That's what was put, that's what's on the floor.
Okay,
Cormac.
got it.
Yeah, I was moved to raise my hand by Amy's comments, which I am in complete sympathy with. But I agree that becomes a bit of a slippery slope. It is one thing to acknowledge that as a consequence of this, 5 things will be lost. To then add, as if it's an innocent separate statement, right? That, and we have a housing crisis, and we've lost a lot of housing or something like that, even while, as Amy says, you're being very specific, right? That you're not saying you're for, you're not taking a position on that. Just that sort of left-handed adding is coloring the statement, and I do think it's problematic. So I just wanted to say that.
Rocio?
I agree with Chanel and the committee. I wasn't at the meeting, but if the committee was told by Landmarks Commission that they should not be weighing in on this, why are we doing this? Just a comment is enough, just like Cormac said. Yes, it will paint it in a certain way, which would be a negative way. People that buy these homes and are converting them to back where they were, they have the ability to do it, and the law allows them to do it. And I think that it's unfair to try to taint it in any way, except the facts that were presented to them and what the facts the Landmarks Commission wants. So I don't think it's necessary to add any extra language to the resolution. It should stand the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Susan Gammy next because she has not spoken. Susan.
Yeah, hi. I think we're a little bit chasing our tails in a kind of circular discussion now. And I think that there isn't really necessarily a very profound difference. And I think we can all agree on the fact that in general, loss of housing is a bad thing when there's an affordable housing crisis. Whether the return of brownstones to single family dwellings from 4 or 5 apartments in, Tony Brownstones in Greenwich Village represents any sort of meaningful solution in any way to the affordable housing crisis, I think is somewhat silly. But to just issue a facts stated statement, much like Eugene has proposed, and much like we've discussed in committee, to say that the return of this house to a single family house represents, that this house was 5, just a simple statement of fact. It was 5 units. It will now be 1 unit. There is no harm in doing that. Nobody is hurt. It's not a value judgment. We're not making an editorial comment. And yet I think that we as community board members who are very concerned about the loss of housing will have said something where it is implied then that this represents a loss of housing. So I think we're overcomplicating this. And I think a simple whereas statement that does not lead to the therefore, because we know that the commission will disregard it. Whether or not it's appropriate in this committee or not, we know pragmatically it will be disregarded. But to issue a simple whereas, much as Eugene has suggested, there's no downside to that. And I think, you know, I think we can move forward. I don't think we need to get caught up in splitting hairs here.
Thank you. Shirley.
Oh, okay, so it's a done deal, right? The house is going to be single family. That's already been decided. Is that correct? Anybody know?
There's no dispute that it will happen.
Okay.
The fact of doing it is not even before the commission. The fact of alterations.
Yeah, but in
Right.
general, it would never be before the commission, obviously. But in general, has it been done with Department of Buildings? I don't know who this goes to.
Well, I don't know what state it's in, but it's an approval.
Uh-huh. Okay, so assuming that
And
it's a
there's
single
no-
family, okay, I get the information now for Chenault. Assuming that it has been approved as a single family already, means that anything that we say in this resolution about the loss of those extra units, which is really sad, it's not going to affect it in any way. And I agree with Susanna that this is a big issue and it should be taken up by the appropriate committee. I don't think it belongs here.
Thank you. Carter.
So many people may not be aware, but right now, and it may or may not go through, but the governor's proposal for the budget includes a provision that each community adds 3% of its total housing, I believe, every 3 years. That requirement would mean that not only does our community have to create an additional 3% of housing every 3 years, it would mean we would need to replace these units and the reduction as they are combined. And that means that we can't even move forward. And the point is that while it is not a burden to the person who's bought this home and it's combined the units, it creates under the governor's plan a burden on the rest of our community as to where to replace that housing. And that is why it's important to note, I think, because this is going to be the discussion going forward. And, you know, if there's an application before the LPC that's on the verge of applying something that's a decision that they may or may not make, just like at storefronts, where they do all the time is lean in the direction of the business because it's an economic decision. It's the same decision that they would make on residential homes. Nobody is saying that LPC covers the exterior of the home, and nor is there necessarily a different on the exterior and whether or not there are multiple units or if it's a single family home. But it's simply a comment, and it's important to note so that people are aware of that other burden. And to, you know, we're a community board and we have the freedom to opine on whatever we like. Just because an agency tells us something doesn't mean that we remain silent. And this is a crisis in the city, and commenting on it so people are aware of the consequences of actions, and particularly relaxing of LPC rules, which is also before us in order to reduce units, I think is a step in the wrong direction. So I support just the simple addition of a whereas, which you know, brings awareness to this issue to all parties involved. Thanks.
Ryder.
Thanks. I think there's like two key issues being kind of conflated here. One is the topic of apartment combinations and the restoration of single family homes to single family homes from multiple units, and whether we should talk about that and take a position as a board on the one hand, and then whether landmarks is the right place to do that. I think as to the former question, to Carter's point, certainly if the governor's housing compact were to pass, which I don't think it is, but if it were, it would be really relevant about housing production to consider these losses. I think independent of that, it's important to think about the loss of housing units in the district from an affordability perspective. I think I put in the chat earlier that I think it could be a really interesting land use here, you know, meeting topic to talk about, you know, all of the apartment combinations, townhouse combinations, et cetera. So I think, you know, we should weigh in on that. I think it would be a great thing to explore further. At the same time, I am persuaded that it's not necessarily germane to a landmarks application and that this is probably not the right forum to make that point, though I think Eugene is bringing up a really important point here. So I do think the board should give it more attention. Thanks.
Okay, Frederica?
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Eugene bringing it up, and I agree with what Ryder said. I wonder if we just can't add a comma after the description of the application that says an application to convert a 5-family building to a 1-family building, and leave it at that. I don't know what the proper grammar is, Chanel, because I don't know what the title of your resolution is, but I don't think we even have to make a whereas out of it.
Susan.
Thank you.
May I make a, if it's an amendment to the amendment that's on the floor?
Well, if
That it
you have to vote on the amendment that's on the floor. You can, I mean, it is Eugene's amendment. If Eugene wants to change the language he puts on the floor, that's one thing. But it's otherwise if you will have to vote then to vote on an amendment to the amendment.
But if it were just a change of the title of the resolution, would it have to be voted on?
You're saying the title in the sense that it's not actually part of the resolution?
Yeah.
Well, if I read what I have, if Eugene agrees, could he withdraw his?
If you read the title.
It's always his right to withdraw it if he so chooses.
General, if you read an alternate, then I'd be willing to consider that.
Okay, why don't you go ahead?
This is my proposal. Looking at the as it's written, this is the new language. Application to convert the house to a single family residence from the current condition of 5 units and alter and so forth.
And so that's you're proposing that on the introduction, right? Number 2 before the whereas.
No, I'm talking about the name of the resolution.
Right. Okay. And I think that's what Frederica was suggesting as well.
And you're okay with that?
I would be okay with that.
Okay. Just put that text into the chat, and then everybody will know what we're voting on, and we will vote on that amendment. And Chanel, if your hand is up, do you have anything else?
No, there's nothing else. We had 3, and that's it.
Okay, Rocio?
Chanel, will you continue to have the language that says to a historic single-family residence? You're going to say application is to return the house to a historic single-family residence.
No, I'm going to put it in the chat now.
And tell me what else you would say.
Let's wait and see what the actual language in the chat is.
And the other comment I just want to make is everybody's talking about affordable housing. We need housing. We need people to build houses, not also affordable housing. But there's a lack of housing, not only in New York, but all over the United States.
I think we should keep the discussion to right now.
I understand, but
the
we're
actual language involved.
I understand that, but the comments have been made that this should be taken up. Yes, and it should be taken up, and to request one of the committees to demand that more housing be built. That's important because the conversation came up. People brought it up. So I'm just going to follow up on what was said.
Okay, got it.
Housing
I would ask people to read up to the word entryway will include all the changes. I put the whole thing in the chat.
Thank you. Janet?
I just want to call out that Mara looked up that this was never all the C of Os she found. It was always a multiple dwelling unit. It had 4 or 5 units. So I don't think, because that's also very biased when you're saying convert to a historic single family residence. We don't have any proof that this was originally single family. So I don't think you should use you should take the historic out of that statement.
No.
It is true that some of these buildings were never, it would be a false assumption to assume that all the brownstones we're talking about have always was started out as single family. That is a fact. Do you
Sorry.
do you want to remove that word or it's?
Yeah, Chanel, would you remove that word?
That's the case with this one because of its size. And because of the way certain changes were made to it. All the evidence would be there is such a thing as building houses, but there's no evidence at all that this was not a very modest because of a rear addition. And if you took the rear addition off, there ought to be room for anything multiple in the old sense.
Shirley?
I'm trying to record this. Could I interrupt for a second? So are we leaving? So it says application is to convert the house to an historic single-family residence from the current condition of 5 units and alter the entryway, allowing the entry door to be level with the sidewalk with a window above, add a stair bulkhead and modifications to the roof and modifications of the rear facade windows. Are we now discussing whether to delete the word historic?
I believe so.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. All right, just want to make sure.
Thank you. Dr. Smith?
Now, I thought I had was muted when I said what I said, and you've already answered it now. So I was asking what exactly is the wording that we're voted on, and she just read it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carter?
Yeah, I was going to say, the landmarks covers the exterior of the building and has nothing to do with the interior. And probably at the time of designation, the majority of all of these buildings were multifamily homes. And, so I think that the interior condition is noting the housing, which is one issue versus the facade. So, and we regularly see the facade arguments used, like I said before, in other cases to support more modern uses of those spaces. And, just whether it's returning to a single family home or not is irrelevant. In fact, we talk extensively within the rezoning of Soho NoHo that the threat, there is that you retain the facades and you build monster buildings behind the historic facades. So, we're sort of going in a different directions, but this is simply, I think, to note, another issue of why LPC might not lean in the favor of one way or another. And it's an important detail for them to know. And they regularly take these issues into account. And then we're putting our head in our sand, saying that they don't and relying on some staff level person, to tell us what we can and can't do. That's absurd. That we are an independent agency and we're able to opine in whatever manner we want, and they can decide whether or not they'll accept that. So, simply just recording this small detail, which doesn't really influence this in the end, if they choose not to accept it, I think is reasonable. And if it's something that they use to decide on something that they're 50-50 on, I think that that's, a reasonable fact as well.
Thank you. Frederica?
I apologize for prolonging this. If it was once a single family house, then I can understand referring it to a historic. But if we just simply said application to convert a 5-family house to a single family residence, then we would make it so much easier on ourselves. If it was never a 1-family house, then to call it historic single-family residence seems to me to be false advertising. So thank you.
Katie?
In addition to, working on this particular.
Your volume is very low.
Okay, I'll try to. In addition to working on this particular example, are we going to ask that the Landmarks Committee in the future, flag this? This isn't just today, but going forward, are we making that request of the Landmarks Committee?
What we're talking about is a proposed amendment. If you want to discuss what the Landmarks Committee will do in the future, that's a policy question that should be directed to the committee.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see Rocio does have her hand up.
Okay, thank you so much. I guess regardless of whether it be from 1820s, 1829 or 1915, it's still pretty historic as far as I'm concerned, that these buildings are still, there were beautiful buildings and we should preserve them as beautiful buildings. And I think that we are getting all too mixed up with this. So I think we should just leave it alone and take up the issue in another committee. That's my thought. But I appreciate everybody's comments. I think they're very well stated and important. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Amy?
Just a suggestion, would this be amenable to everybody if you just put the word historic before? Application is to convert an historic house to a single family residence. It's an historic house, we know that. And then there's no discussion about whether it was single family, multi-unit, just say it's an historic house to a single family. Shanat, would you be okay with that? And would that?
It's not
satisfy-
it's not Chanel's amendment. It is Eugene's amendment.
Oh, okay, I thought, okay, so Shanat apply the language to Eugene. Eugene, would you be open to that?
So yeah, I don't want to prolong this too much. So you're suggesting just saying convert the historic house to a single family residence from the, so basically just drop the word historic. I mean, move
No,
the
you're
word
putting
historic.
historic in, you're putting it before the word house. So then there's no dispute. Was it a single family? Was it a multi-unit? Right?
It's just a
Currently-
statement of fact. I would accept that. I mean, the whole purpose of this was simply just to have it as a statement of fact. So I'd be fine with that.
I'm just trying to get through this knot. that we're
But
having.
Eugene, aren't you just forgetting about the point you made in the loss of the apartments? By accepting, I just raised my hand.
Sorry. No. It's
Sorry.
I don't want to impugn it and say that there's any judgment we're placing on converting from 5 to 1, but that simply this is a fact, as if, it's the same thing as if it's, a 3-story adding another floor. It's a simple, just description of what's going on. Because it is something that does come before the Landmarks Committee often, and no other committee.
You're still including from 5.
From 5, right? I'm still it still says to go from 5 to 1.
That was my question. Okay. Trying to figure out, okay.
I put the language in the chat. I just moved the word historic, if Eugene is okay with that.
Thank
I
you,
just-
Amy.
Thank you.
And your hand is up. Is there anything
No,
else?
no, that was it. I'll lower my hand.
Okay, I see no more hands up, so we will now vote on the amendment that based on the language that everyone has seen that's in the chat. Okay, so all those, you ready to?
Would anyone like me to read it aloud again? Is everybody clear?
Wait a minute, Ryder, you have your
I
hand.
just, sorry, this just to clarify, the amendment doesn't say anything about 5 units. I just want to make sure that this
Yes,
is.
it does.
Oh, it does, it does.
Does. It says it's formerly 5,
Oh,
converting to
I'm
1.
reading what Amy put in the chat. I guess maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing.
No, it says application is to convert the historic house to a single family resident from the
I see,
current
I see.
condition
Sorry.
of 5 units.
My bad.
It's okay.
Got it.
Nope.
Thank you.
No, it's okay.
Okay, you're clear. Okay, we're ready to vote.
Okay.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? No one's opposed, no abstention, any abstentions or recusals? Okay, so the amendment passes, the resolution is now amended. And unless anybody objects, it will now go into the omnibus with the other resolutions.
Susan, may I say just something else?
Yes, you may.
This would seem to occasion that we need some system that to whichever committee is the most appropriate, we send notification when this happens. So that the committee that's concerned with affordable housing and number of units and so forth is kept informed of these as they come to us.
Okay. Then you want land use and housing and land use.
Right.
to
So that
be aware.
but we could work out between the committees.
I will take that. I will definitely take that under advisement, and we can discuss that at another time. Okay, that does it for landmarks. Quality of life, Will.
Okay, 11 street activities this month, 9 FYI renewals, bringing us to 20 total for the month. Everything was unanimous. I'll go through the resolutions quickly. Number 1, 420 street closure event, Howard between Broadway and Mercer. This was the event aforementioned by Susan. Denial that they ultimately withdrew. Number 2, Malin and Goats, NIFTA Lafayette between Prince and Jersey, April 22nd, 23rd, approve. Number 3, Amazon Freebie food truck, multiple locations, April 25th to 26th, that was approved. Again, these are all unanimous. Number 4, there's a typo there on the date, but the 28th through the 30th, Valentino Beauty double-decker bus, LaGuardia between Houston and Bleecker. That was an approve. Number 5, Coach Tabby Tour, May 5th through 7th, Gansevoort Plaza. That was a deny. And then we also asked if it was approved to push back the load in time because they wanted to load in at 5 a.m. We asked to move that to 7. Number 6, neighborhood sidewalk sale, Bedford, 6th Ave between Downing and Bedford, May 7th. That was approved. Number 7, Sephardic Heritage Museum, May 13th, bond between Lafayette and Bowery. This was basically opposing it as it was proposed because it's a full day street closure for a private event. But we did add a resolution, therefore be it resolved that we were interested in the organization and would encourage them to hold a public event that was open to the public. That was everything's unanimous. 8 and 9, we put together these are 2 different street events as part of the Penn World Voices Festival. They made one presentation talking about both. Those were both approved, although for one of the events, which was an indie lit fair on the sidewalk, we did ask that they shrink the number of tables to allow for adequate right-of-way for pedestrians. Number 10, May 13th, Village Fair and Expo, Broadway between Waverly and East 14th. That was deny. And number 11, Kristen S. Hair Mobile Application, Houston between Broadway and Crosby. May 13th, curb lane, that was approval, provided that they move to a better location. Because the chosen corner of Houston that they had chosen was not optimal because it was super busy and near one of the subway exits. And then all of the different 8 FYI renewals or 9 FYI renewals, excuse me, are on there, and that was approval for those.
Okay, does anyone want to discuss any of the, yes, Carter? Can you?
Wanted to call out number 7. The committee did vote to deny the application, and it doesn't state that, even though it did discuss the further resolved. And it doesn't clearly state that the board denied the application or recommended denial of it. It just said the board doesn't support the concept.
I think we're trying to provide color. I mean, yes, we can amend it if you want. We're trying to provide color specifically as to why we denied this one.
But it doesn't say that it was denied.
Okay, so
if you just
If you
tweak
wanna
it so it
propose an
actually
amendment,
recommends
yeah.
denial, I think, is that what you're saying?
Right,
suggesting,
therefore be it
it's
resolved that
specifically-
CB2 Manhattan recommends denial, the standard denial. And then in general does not support the, why. But, and then also
Sure.
there's an additional restaurant, Fish Cheeks, in addition to Il Buco. Who puts out tables and chairs. And then I think also the DJ that the committee had discussed. Not supporting having a DJ during the event.
Thought we mentioned the DJ, no? Yeah, we put that it has amplified sound and a DJ.
Right, but I meant in
the
the,
whereas.
the further, therefore be it resolved. That invites the applicant to consider holding a different style event within CB2 without a DJ that would allow community members to engage and learn more about.
Okay, I don't remember us specifically saying the second, therefore was involving a DJ, but.
Well,
you're
you
proposing an
wanted to put
amendment.
in, right, I mean, that was the impact on the block, right? And so if you're asking them to do a different style event, that was a significant impact, and I think the committee had discussed that.
Yeah, although I don't think we were saying that the other kind of event had to be on that specific block. So. I think there were I guess there were a lot of, there was the DJ, there was the fact that it was a full day of street closure. I mean, there were different issues that went into that one. I don't think it was just the DJ. So I don't know if we need to just call that out specifically.
Okay, I'd like to propose those changes.
Can you put
Okay,
them in the chat, please?
Because we need your language.
I mean, I'm not even, I mean, for the denial, I mean, I don't even think that's I would need to
That's,
propose that,
I
'cause
think
it's,
I agree that can just be that can be reworked because that was what was decided in the committee. So I don't
And-
think that has to be an amendment.
And I think that if you're providing guidance, a different style of event, it was about the overall impacts, right? So I was just,
The first one is just a clarification of what is there. The
Yeah,
second-
I
if you want
agree.
an amendment, then please provide the language.
okay, well, I mean, okay, I mean, this just doesn't reflect what occurred at the committee meeting is what I'm saying. So the amendment that I'm suggesting is actually consistent, I think, with what the committee had discussed. So that's more my points, but
But you
the-
still,
My-
but
my
this is
reco-
still what
my
was
rec-
produced, that's why.
My recollection was that it was a deny, and so I agree we can reword that just to make that reflect that aspect, but I didn't note that there was a specific recommendation around a DJ or not having a DJ for us asking them to come back and do a different style of event. I mean, that whatever they came back with would again come before the committee, presumably. And I think we raised that as one of the concerns. But I don't know if as a committee, we decided to call out those kind of specificities in our second, therefore, but I'm looking at the
well,
notes
you
now.
discuss the impacts, and that's why it's
Yes.
specific impact. And you don't actually ask the applicant to come back.
We say invites the applicant. Well, any kind of street event comes before us, so.
Okay, the point is though, whether or not it actually reflects what you believe the committee decided, if you're changing the language in a significant way, it does have to be presented as an amendment and text has to be provided. Let me call on people whose hands are up. Amy.
Yeah, hi, quick question. Well, did your committee look over the resolution before you sent it out? I'm just wondering if anyone on your
Yes.
committee. So your own committee believes that that resolution represents what you discussed.
It was
And
sent
agreed
out
upon?
a couple days ago to them.
Okay. And I just wanted to confirm that your committee looked at it and you're all in agreement that that adequately represents what you discussed and what you meant to say. Thank you.
Rocio.
I think that Will is correct, and if we just add the wording, therefore be it resolved that CB2 Manhattan denies the application, but invites the applicant to consider. I don't think we need to mention, because this is what we decided as a committee member. The committee members decided this. And that's what Will sent around, and we all looked at it and read it, and I guess most of us did, and we were okay with that language. We did not catch the fact that it didn't say deny, but I think it was kind of not exactly said, but that was the essence. But I think if Will accepts the word deny, we deny, I think we might be okay. I don't think we need to go into the DJ. We might as well throw the kitchen soup in there too. I mean, everything.
Susanna,
I'd like to know if we can just move along with this. I mean, it sounds like.
are you making a motion to end debate?
Yes, I am making a
Call the
motion. to
question.
end debate.
Okay, thanks for
that
cutting me
requires-
off.
Question.
I thought you were coming back to me, but that's cool.
I will come back to you. I would appreciate in the future if you raise your hand, so I know to come back to you.
I'd like to call the question.
Okay, well, a debate.
Well, they
is
can't
not
call a
open.
question because there's not an amendment in the chat, so there's
I
not.
don't know what I'm supposed to say. I just think that we're spending a lot of time on something that is a very small point, and I feel that it is prerogative of the chair to interpret the way, it's the prerogative of the committee to interpret what the sentiments of the committee were, and those are accurately reflected in the resolution as written.
That is
Except for that point of
correct.
clarity, I think that we should just move along.
That is correct. It is, the chair has incorporated what he believes and what the committee is supporting him. That is correct. Whether or not another board member wishes to propose an amendment is a separate issue.
I completely understand.
Point of order,
Our
Madam Chair,
prerogative
if
to
there
propose an
isn't
amendment-
Okay, we have,
amendment in the chat,
excuse me, no back and forth. We have a point of order. That does.
if there
take
isn't
precedence.
amendment in the chat, I don't think there's anything on the floor and we should move on.
There is nothing was put into the chat?
Nothing.
Well, there was nothing put into the chat because the only thing that was proposed and was agreed upon was to clearly state that that was a recommended denial. And that was not put into the chat because that was a simple clarification of existing language. But I will call Carter. And
Was
that's
there
gonna
a
be-
second on the call, on Susanna's,
I second it.
okay, I'd like to request a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Okay, just so you know, when you call the question, it's a 2/3 vote. And that's how it gets
Well, I
done.
mean, if you're gonna call the question, that's, we can slow it down more if you're gonna cut off discussion, so.
I'm
Can
not.
I make a
I'm not
point of
talking about
order? Like
discussion.
how are we calling the question? There's no, what's the question?
Well, it's to end debate. My mistake. It's not.
Okay.
It's to end debate. That's what we're voting on.
We have to do a roll call for
And
this?
you want it, well, a roll call vote was requested, and that's what happens. If somebody requests a roll call vote, you do have to provide one.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna do it super, super fast. So people, everybody have your microphone open. Susanna
what's the
Aaron,
I vote to end debate.
Natasha Avanasians,
Yes.
Akila Asqui, you're not here. William Benesh,
Yes.
Keen Berger,
Yes.
Carter Booth. I know
Yeah.
you're here. Katie Bordenaro.
No,
You do not want to end it. Okay. Anita Brandt.
Yes.
I yes say yes. Rich Pecapolo.
Is left.
Oh, left. Okay. Chris Dignas,
Yes.
Bobby Lee.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Mar Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Stella Fitzgerald.
I'm going to abstain as well.
Okay. Cormac Flynn,
Yes.
Susan Jamie,
Yes.
David Gruber. I'll come back to you. Wayne Cowadler,
Yes.
Susan Kent,
Yes.
Ryder Kessler,
Yes.
Janine Kiley,
Yes.
Patricia Laria,
Yes.
Michael Levine,
Yes.
Janet Liff,
Yes.
Ed Ma, you're not here. Matt Metzger,
Yes.
Dan Miller,
Yes.
Juan Osario,
Yes.
Brian Pape,
Yes, to end.
Donna Raftery.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Lois Rackoff.
Yes.
Bo Rocabono. Just put your, if you can't talk, just put it in the chat. Zach Roberts,
Yes.
Robin Rothstein,
Yes.
Rosia Sands,
Yes.
Shirley Secunda,
Yes.
Kristen Shea.
I had to step out of the room, so I didn't hear the whole argument, so I abstain. Thanks.
Okay, Frederica Siegel,
Yes.
Dr. Shirley Smith,
Abstain.
abstain. Shannon Spence,
Yes.
Susan Wittenberg,
Yes.
Anthony Wong,
Abstain.
abstain. Cheryl Wu,
Yes.
Eugene Yu,
Abstain.
abstain. Okay, it passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So discussion, okay. Is there were no other resolutions from quality of life, then these will all, yes, Amy. Your hand is up.
Oh, I didn't mean to hit that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My hand's not up.
Then those go into the omnibus. Now, the next is I'm sorry, is traffic and transportation.
Yes. Okay, so this resolution came out of the executive committee. The vote was taken there, that is. And the resolution came about because we had actually been asked by the borough president's office to do this because it was very timely for now. And that's the explanation of how this came about and went to the executive committee. Won't waste any more time about that unless anyone wants to ask questions. The resolution, oh, and by the way, we have done a resolution in the past, which is similar to this. And this just seemed to be the right time when there is work being done right now on the Greenway. Resolution in support of the creation of an additional protected travel lane on the Hudson River Greenway. Be it resolved, the Community Board 2 Manhattan urges New York State through its Department of Transportation to create an additional protected travel lane in each direction to form a part of the network known as the Hudson River Greenway, including without limitation the use of space in the roadbed of West Street Route 9A as is necessary for this purpose, and to test this much needed lane as part of its Hudson River Greenway resurfacing project. Further, we ask that the Hudson River Greenway resurfacing project be conducted holistically, that is, in its entirety, simultaneously from its origins at Christopher Street to where it terminates at West 58th Street. And finally, we ask that New York State DOT provide a schedule of Hudson River Greenway resurfacing work, where it will take place, at what times, and plans for detours and closing of any areas.
Thank you, Shirley. Okay, Dan has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that you heard tonight from Senator Hoylman Siegel and you heard from Carlina Rivera, the council member, that these are hot topics. There's that $800,000 that we hope to pass. That could go right into this task plan. You have a lot of politicians talking about it. And like Shirley mentioned, it's very timely. And the Hudson River Park Advisory Council will be drafting something similar as well. So our local electeds have asked us for support, and we drafted this in a week to get it through the executive committee.
And that's why it went through executive, because there was no opportunity to make it through the regular committee and still get it out in a timely manner. So thank you for that extra work. Seeing Frederica?
Just a quick question. Is that a multi-purpose extra lane or for a particular purpose?
That is for specifically for like e-bikes, correct?
It's taking a lane from vehicle traffic and giving it to a dedicated two-way e-bike lane.
E-bike, thank you.
And I think it says that in the resolution. Take a
It
look.
does.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, seeing nothing else, it will now go into the omnibus. And the next is land use and housing. Eugene and Katie.
We have
I
two
think Katie's
matters
gonna go
tonight.
first.
Okay. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, we have two matters tonight, so we're splitting up our duties. Where is it?
Cannot hear you.
I know, because I'm not saying anything. The first matter was a request that we review an after-hours permit for the Atlas project, which is 570 Washington, and there's a mistake in the, it's not 170 Clarkson, it's 180 Clarkson. This is the Washington, Houston, West Clarkson block where we're going to have affordable housing and luxury housing built. And they have a construction project which requires the erection of precast concrete slabs, and they want to do it from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. And that would take about, it's over a period of 3 quarters, starting in the fall of 2024 and going into summer of 2025. So the DOB wanted to have the support, wanted them to get a letter of support from the community board, and we had a hearing, and we heard from. In the hearing, we heard from 2 neighboring buildings, and by email, we heard from a 3rd neighboring building, and everyone says no. Everyone who lives nearby says no. The work there is going to start at 7 a.m., and then we'll continue until 6 p.m., and then we'll start up again at 8 p.m. and go to 4 a.m. And 4 a.m. is when the FedEx and the UPS trucks, which are also right next door, start up. And so there'll be 2 hours a day of quiet in that immediate vicinity. So we refused to write a letter of support. Instead, we're writing a letter to the DOB commissioner telling him of our opinion and the community response, and we've asked them to come back in 6 months. We have asked them some questions about where these trucks would wait to come onto the site, and but we'll hear from them again in 6 months, we expect, which will still be in, which will be well before they plan to start the work.
Okay, so you
if
recommend
there's no
denial.
resolution, this is just a report to you.
It's not a resolution, it's just a report. Okay, thank you. And Eugene?
Thank you, and thank you, Katie. So the second item for us at the land use meeting was regarding 388 Hudson Street. We had representatives from the Department of Housing, Preservation and Development come and give a overview of an RFP process that they would like to start regarding building affordable housing on the site, presenting their ideas for a community engagement plan, and then a preliminary zoning analysis of what could be built. As part of their zoning analysis, they had several assumptions. I just want to go through the assumptions because they are important. One is that the development site area was 13,622 square feet. Second is that it's 100% affordable. Third is it's a mixed use facility that they're envisioning with a ground floor community facility. Fourth, it will be rezoned from the current manufacturing to residential. And there were 3 illustrative examples. So again, these are not concrete examples, but they were kind of back of the envelope illustrative examples of what it would look like in if it was zoned R8A, R9A, and then also R10A. The average unit size for purposes of calculating how many dwelling units were going to be created, it's assuming an average unit size of 825 square feet, which is standard for when they do these types of analyses. Sixth, all these options trigger MIH, and so it's a combination of MIH with affordable. So it's all affordable, but there's different types of affordability and different types of affordable, whether it's permanent or not. So that's another wrinkle there. And then 7th assumption was that the building, which is on the northern half of this lot, would have legally required windows facing south. And then if you'll notice on the resolution and the seventh whereas, this is actually the examples of, R8 to R10, R10 being the densest that they proposed. But it gives us anywhere from a range of 106 dwelling units up to 181, assuming the higher density. And an FAR of between 7.15 and 11.72. What we took note of was that this zoning analysis did not take advantage of the full 25,000 square feet available on the lot. So the lot itself is 25,000 square feet. And the assumption had always been, as CB2 has advocated for the site, that all of those would be used for purposes of calculating the FAR of anything that was built on the site. There was also some, we also asked about the easement or the amount of the lot that's required by DEP to access the southern portion of the site. And that number had changed, I think initially in, when this was first proposed in 1999 for the city water tunnel, they had said they needed something like 9,000 some square feet. Recently, they had increased that to 11,000 some square feet. So there was no explanation for why that amount had increased. We emphasized that this was very important to our neighborhood. This is, if not the only, one of the most viable places to build affordable housing in our district. There's very few places in the district that are not built on already. And so this is very important for CB2 in order for us to contribute affordable housing to the neighborhood. And because of this change that we were not, really on board with, which was DEP wanting to split the lot and not use the full 25,000 square feet, our resolution is that we asked that CB2 asked that HPD clarify and justify their critical zoning analysis assumptions that currently unreasonably limit the size and design of any affordable housing development, and to pause further progress on the RFP and the envisioning process until these critical threshold questions are resolved. So our first part of what we're asking for is that they put a pause on what they're doing until they can answer how much of the site is buildable and how much can be used for the zoning. And then further be it resolved that to maximize production of affordable housing at 388 Hudson at any zoning level, CB2 Manhattan strongly supports one, preserving the development rights as if it were a single 25,000 square foot lot, which will maximize production of affordable housing at all zoning levels. Two, a zoning variance to eliminate an unnecessary 30-foot setback on the southern edge of the northern portion of 388 Hudson Street site, which will maximize the production of affordable housing at all zoning levels. Three, we requested clarity on the size of the buildable portion of the 388 Hudson Street site, in particular, the reasons for increasing the DEP easement of 9,375 square feet. And then fourth, we recognize the need to protect the DEP's continued access to the southern portion for operations and maintenance of infrastructure located beneath and on the water tunnel site. But we thought the mechanisms for that would be through something such as a permanent easement. The vote for that was unanimous. So if there are any other questions.
Thank you. Any questions, any discussion? I do not see any hands raised. I'm sorry. Yes, Shirley.
Yeah, I do have a question. The question is about the setback. And I may be a little rusty about zoning, but I've always been under the impression that you do a setback to allow some light and air to get into that area. And so this is kind of like a contradiction of the purpose and being of the setback. The other thing is, where are we standing with our long-standing position for a park green area in that DEP space? Has that been taken into consideration? Because if that's the case, and that's the southern side, then that would
Right.
be a very good reason for having that setback, to keep that light and air there.
So I'll defer on the second half of your question to Rich, if that's okay. But for the first part of the question, in regards to the setback. So the setback, my understanding is it is for light and air, but the way the zoning works is it's assuming there's a building that would be built on the southern portion of the site, because if they are looking to split the lot, they're operating as if there was a future building. And, if everything we're seeing is that there never will be anything built. It's permanent open space on the southern portion where, it's envisioned as a future park. So that is supposed to be permanent open space. So from our perspective, it didn't really make sense to push the building north another 30 feet. There are plenty of examples in the district in CB2 of buildings that go against an open space that have no setback. So yes, the reason for the setback is that if there was another building, you would want to make sure there's a shaft, that there's light and air for any windows that you put on that side. But since there is no way that there's ever going to be a building built there, it didn't really seem to make sense that they were artificially putting in a setback, because that constrains the size of the building. Is that, did I get your question correctly, or?
Yes.
Did you
But
have
I still don't understand, though, is if you're having open space there, and you would have some kind of green open space area, wouldn't you want to keep it free of shadows? And
Oh,
so
shadow. Yeah.
No, right. So maybe I don't understand exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, I think shadows would be a different thing, and that would be a shadow study moving forward. But the setback is really primarily to let in light and air. Just it's
Right. Yes.
yeah,
well,
and we'll have light
no
and air,
shadows.
and we'll have light and air because there's not going to be a building there.
It's light and air for the residents of the building.
Oh,
Yes, sorry, residents of the building. Yes.
Shirley, Dr. Smith.
Okay, no, I think I get it. I think I get it.
And then Rich, if you want to jump in.
Rich isn't here, but I can talk about the southern parcel if there are questions about it. It's an open space, but it will have all of the constraints required by the former water tunnel sites, because there is the need for ongoing permanent access to the infrastructure below the street level. So it constrains what can be limited, what can be constructed in the space, which is why you can't have a building there, for example.
That's right, but it's permanently open.
Yes.
Which is why you don't need a setback, because you have the light and air that's created by the compulsory openness of the space.
Yes, that's what Eugene's point is, that this normally sensible requirement of having setbacks to allow light and air to the residents of the building are unnecessary if that building is facing an open space. And Janine is texting me, but I haven't seen what she's saying.
I get
it. Okay, Dr. Smith does her hand up.
Thank you, Susan. Eugene, can you give us some examples of the different kinds of affordability you referenced?
We didn't really get into it too much at this meeting. So, I mean, I think there was the presentation for what they gave us a presentation, which is also included in the board packet. And so whatever information is there is what we have. They are coming back. I think at this point we are looking to have them back. We haven't confirmed it yet, but it's looking very likely we will have them back in May. But it was not something that we discussed in any detail at all at this meeting.
Eugene, may I just jump in?
Yes.
I think my sort of outside understanding, Dr. Smith, is it may depend on what kind of programs and funding come in. So I don't think we're at that stage yet to be able to define what the different levels will be. I'm going to go change my phone because I'm running. Will you run my battery down?
Frederica.
Yeah, I just want to say that ultimately they send out an RFP and the developer decides the range of affordability based on the finances of the building. And because of all the shafts underneath the park side, there's really no opportunity to plant trees except above grade in planters or something. So the issue of shade is really never gonna be an issue. But it's a good question, Charlie. Thank you.
I think the shadows had more to do with the north, going north in terms of the residences along the streets.
St. Luke's.
Leroy, please. Leroy. St. Luke's.
St. Luke's Place. That's what the shadows they're talking about. Which is what part of the argument is that having flexibility in how this is masked can help us, be sensitive to that issue. Katie, you trying to say something?
No, I'm just getting my phone in order.
Okay. I see no more hands, so if there's no objection, we are going, oh, yes, Carter.
I didn't want to interrupt the discussion about the second resolution. The first one, we're still voting on, correct? Because we're taking even though it's a letter, it's a board, we're taking a position. So I think the board needs to vote on it because the committee vote can't act in lieu of the board.
I thought it was minutes, not a letter.
But we're issuing a response to the Department of Buildings against an action.
Could the chairs clarify whether it's just minutes or a letter?
Katie, I believe it's a letter.
We will send a letter to the Department of Buildings because they want to know our opinion.
It's an opinion, so it should be voted on.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure we voted
That's okay.
on it.
It just gets voted on just the way the other resolutions are voted on.
Correct, but it was just framed that we weren't voting on it, so I just wanted to make sure that it's included as a vote and not just minutes.
Thank you, Carter.
It will.
Thank you.
Correct. Okay, next, okay, if there's no objection and those go into the omnibus SLA.
Okay, SLA 1, we had 16 applications and 5 resolutions, and all of our decisions were unanimous. The first one was Art Farm Food Inc., doing business as Manuel at 130 Prince Street. It's a new on-premise for a restaurant, previously unlicensed. We heard this back in December 2022, and they just changed the corporate name. That was it. Same principles. They signed the same stipulations, so we waived appearance for them. And that was denial less with the stipulations 7-0. The next one was Like-Minded Hospitality, doing business as Rosioli at 43 McDougal Street. This is a transfer application for a restaurant wine, and that was denial less with stipulations 6-0. The next one was Two Old Rabbits, doing business as 124 Old Rabbit Club at 124 McDougal Street. That was Tavern Wine, denial less with stipulations. And Hamburger America LLC, doing business as Hamburger America, 51 McDougal. That's a new restaurant wine in a previously unlicensed location. Also denial less with stipulations unanimous. And then the last one is Gigi Group LLC and 142 Emmett Partners at 138 Bowery. That's a new on-premise for a hotel, which is the one that people came to speak about with the multi-level entertainment, performance venue, nightclub, lounge, and previously unlicensed location, and that was unanimous to deny that one 7-0. And that was it for me.
Great. We do have Rocio.
Just a very quick question. On number 1, Art Farm, 130 Prince Street. Could you please tell us, is the new OP restaurant, what is the overall capacity of the restaurant? Reference is only made as to guests in a private dining room of 10 people in the basement. Can you tell us what is the overall
You know what,
capacity?
Rocio, off the top of my head, I do not know that. I think I have to click back to the original reso that I wrote, which you should be able to click to in there as well.
Just a guess.
I
Okay, never mind. And
don't remember. I honestly
Okay.
don't remember.
fine, thank you so much.
Thank you. I see no more hands, so these SLA 1 will go into the omnibus and now SLA 2.
Good evening, everyone. We had 20 applications. Out of the 20 applications, we resolved 7 of them. I'll read them one at a time. The first one is an entity to be formed by Margit Ignala, DBA Rosecrans at 7 Greenwich Street, also known as 1 Christopher Street. It's a new tavern wine license. The recommendation is deny unless with stipulations. That was unanimous. Number 2 is A. Hernandez on behalf of the entity to be determined. It's going to be known as Casa Nori at 205A Bleecker Street, new tavern wine. The recommendation is deny unless with stipulations, unanimous. Number 3, Round and Square, DBA Mamas 2, 32325 Bleecker Street. This is a new tavern wine license. Again, the recommendation is deny unless with stipulations. Number 4 is Violet Force, DBA Sissio West Village, 681 Washington Street. This is a new on-premise license operated restaurant. Deny unless is the recommendation with stipulations. Number 5 is Lay Industry, WV LLC, 104 Christopher Street. This is a new restaurant wine application. The recommendation was to deny this application. Again, the vote was unanimous. Number 6 is Restaurant Associates. This is 550 Washington Street, the new Google building. It's a catering license. Recommendation is deny unless with stipulations. Number 7 is Talia Beer, 102 Christopher Street. This is a new tavern wine license. Recommendation is to deny this application. That was unanimous as well. And then the rest, 8 through 20, are layovers, withdrawals, and either a no-show if there is one. I'm not sure there is, but mostly layovers and withdrawals.
Okay, yes, Ryder.
Thanks. Number 5 and number 7, I noticed those are in neighboring storefronts, both formerly Rag and Bone. Are those affiliated at all in any way? It seems interesting that they, in those neighboring storefronts, came at the same time to request very similar things. So is there any more to that story?
There really isn't. They were separate and they were represented separately. It just turned out to be at the same time, the same night.
And maybe this is a counterfactual that's impossible to conjecture on, but if only one had applied and not 2, would that have changed the calculus? Because as someone who lives down the street, both of these sound great to me, but maybe if only one were applying, they might have had a better hearing or less community opposition. But I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, maybe not. I'm not certain. All I know is what did happen. We did hear 2. They were right next to each other. That definitely complicated the situation. And they really, neither one had an explanation about the other one in terms of where things would go, and they would be side by side. So I don't know what would have happened if there would have been opposition. I think the other problem with both applications is that they were not willing to compromise, at least in terms of trying to figure something out to make it work out. So I do think that was generally the problem with both those applications.
Got it. Well, I missed the Rag and Bone because I'm a Rag and Bone shopper, but I think these could be interesting too. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Ryder.
Okay, thank you. And I see no more hands raised. So the SLA resos will now go into the omnibus. And next is Human Services. Susanna.
Thank you. This resolution, first of all, thanks to Ryder for all his great work on it. It's in support of Paul's Place. It's in support, a resolution in support of Paul's Place's valuable contributions to Community District 2 and requesting further engagement of neighbors and of Community Board 2 as operations continue. Therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 2, 1, supports the valuable work that Paul's Place is doing in providing stable shelter options and essential services to street homeless members of our community. 2, commends Paul's Place and CUCS for collaborative engagement with the surrounding community and for responsiveness to Community Board 2. 3, encourages Paul's Place to continue robust engagement of neighbors and community members in surfacing and resolving issues related to its presence in the neighborhood. 4, requests that Paul's Place return to CB2 in another 6 months to report on updates, including additional data about successful connection of clients and residents to mental health support and permanent housing. 5, advocates for serious considerations by DSS, DHS of expansion of the private room, low threshold, safe haven shelter model in order to meet the demand of street homeless New Yorkers for this alternative to congregate shelter. 6, affirms the need for New York City to increase the number of supportive and conventional housing opportunities in order to speed the rate at which New Yorkers in shelter can move into more permanent housing. And finally, entreats the city to take meaningful action to make housing more affordable and to augment outreach and support of individuals with severe mental illness in order to reduce the destabilization and vulnerability that arise from resulting street homelessness. And the vote should be written, it was unanimous in favor.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mike.
Yes, I have a quick question. Thank you. It's an excellent resolution, and I think the facility is excellent. You mentioned in the executive committee meeting that the sign is very small intentionally. I tried to look for that location and couldn't find it one night. Is there a reason why the sign is so small and not larger?
Yes, I think that they don't want to draw attention to the fact that this is a drop-in shelter for homeless individuals. There is, if you look closely, there is a label on the door. It says CUCS, but there is nothing that says Paul's Place, and that's intentional.
So is there any difficulty in finding the location for those who want to use it?
I think that many people are directed there by the Manhattan Outreach Consortium. And also community members have been encouraged to, if you see someone on the street who looks like they could be in need of services, to share information of the address, which is 112 or 114 West 14th Street. I've done so on occasion.
Is
Thank
the
you.
address
Excellent,
on the,
excellent resolution. Thank you.
oh, excuse me. Is the address at least on the door so people can?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
It should be. Yeah, I can't remember, but I'm sure that it is. It's pretty obvious once you get there. I mean, it's a glass door, there's a security desk. It's not the Salvation Army. I mean, it's pretty, I don't think they're having, let's put it this way, they're not having a hard time attracting customers. They are operating at pretty much full capacity, and they have a waiting list every night for the lounge bed, the lounge chairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Frederica.
Yeah, you can, just inside the door, there's a metal detector. And you can see that from outside, but there's no number and there's no name, in my experience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no more discussion, this resolution will also go into the omnibus. So.
And just a note to the secretary to just add that the vote was unanimous in favor, because that's not written on the resolution now. Sorry, my fault.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else, we will take a vote on the omnibus. One thing I would like to just mention, it wasn't in your packet. It is part of the bylaws report, however. Attached were drafts of the communications policies and a proposed small change to the bylaws. I just want everyone to be aware of that if they didn't have a chance to look at that report, because that will be voted on next month. And I want everyone to have enough time to consider it. If anyone has any questions, please reach out to me. If need be, we will schedule another meeting so that people can discuss any concerns they have at length. Okay, let's see. Amy, would you just read out all the items that are in the omnibus, please?
Okay. I do have a question about SLA 1, but landmarks 1 to 3, 1 to 3, quality of life 1 to 20. TNT 1, number 1, land use and housing 1 and 2. SLA 1, I don't think I got your numbers right, and I'm sorry, I haven't had a chance to go back in and look.
Okay, so it was 1 to 5 were resolutions and 6 through 16 were laid over or withdrawn.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, SLA 20 applications and human services 1 resolution. That's what we got.
Is there any opposition to voting? Being none, this will be a final roll call vote.
Okay, let me just get organized here. Okay.
Carter, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I should note the resolutions with the modifications because they're not as.
Okay, they are. Let's see, resolution number 2 for Landmarks Committee has a unanimous voice vote on an amendment, and quality of life has a revision in resolution number 7. Okay, have I missed anything?
Say that again, please, Amy.
Sure, no problem. Landmarks, resolution number 2, a unanimous voice vote on an amendment for 32 Jane Street. Quality of life, resolution number 2. There was no vote. They're just incorporating the word denial.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great, good. Okay, here we go. Susanna Aaron.
Yes to all.
Okay. Natasha Abanasians.
Yes to all, with the exception of SLA committee number 2, items 5 and 7, which I'm voting no.
Okay, got it. Will Banesh.
Yes to all.
Okay, Keen Berger.
Yes to all.
Carter Booth.
Yes to all.
Katie Bordenaro.
Yes to all.
Okay, Anita Brandt.
Yes to all.
I'm voting yes to all. Let's see, we're all the way down to Chris Dignas.
Yes to all, with the exception of SLA 2, number 5 and 7.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bob Ely.
Yes to all.
Okay. Mara Fitzgerald.
Yes to all.
Okay. Stella Fitzgerald.
Yes to all.
Cormac Flynn.
Don't tell me that.
I'm sorry, yes to all.
Okay. Susan Gammy.
Yes to all.
David Gruber.
Yes to all.
Wayne Kawadler.
Yes to all.
Susan Kent.
Yes to all.
Ryder Kessler.
Yes to all except no on SLA 2, numbers 5 and 7.
Okay. Janine Kiley.
Yes to all.
Okay. Patricia Laria.
Yes to all.
Michael Levine.
Yes to all.
Janet Liff. Oh, yes, Janet Liff.
Yes to all except no on SLA 2, 5 and 7.
2, SLA 2. Oh, SLA 2, 5 and 7.
Numbers 5 and 7.
Yeah, got it. Matt Metzger.
Yes to all.
Dan Miller.
Yes to all.
Okay.
Uh,
Juan Osorio.
Yes to all.
Okay. Brian Pape.
Yes to all.
Donna Raftery.
Yes to all.
Lois Rakoff.
yes to all.
Zach Roberts.
Yes to all except SLA 2, 5 and 7.
Okay. Robin Rothstein.
Yes to all.
Rocio Sands.
Yes to all except SLA 2, 5 and 7.
Okay. Shirley Secunda.
Yes to all.
Kristen Shea.
Yes to all except for the land use, the development on Hudson Street.
Number one or number two?
It's whichever one was about developing.
It was number
Um,
two.
Number two,
Thank you.
388 Hudson? Okay,
Thanks.
sure, no problem. Frederica Siegel?
Yes to all.
Okay, Dr. Shirley Smith?
Yes to all.
Shanat Spence?
Yes to all.
Susan Wittenberg?
Yes to all.
Anthony Wong?
Yes to all.
Okay, Cheryl Wu?
Yes to all.
Eugene Yu?
To all.
Okay, it passes with,
Great. Any new business? Seeing none, I will take a motion to, oh, I'm sorry, Janine.
I just want to acknowledge there's several CB2 members who are on tonight who are leaving the board, who've not reapplied to join the board. So I want to wish them farewell.
Oh, do they?
That's Bob Ely, Robin Rothstein, Adam Zeldin, but he's not here tonight. Janet Liff and Mustafa, who's also not here.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Thank you for all those of you who are here. You have been a tremendous asset and we will miss you, and thank you for your service. And hey, come on back. You know, you can, public member, we're always looking for public members. All the fun, none of the work. If there's no objection, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Congratulations. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
good night.
Good night.